These on it just like that. That's right. Mayor Graham is going to be a bit late this evening. So we'll start without him and we'll do a quick roll call. So Councillor Chandler. Councillor Weatherholt.
Present.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Shada. Councillor Wolf.
Here.
Thank you. And for those of you who didn't catch on, Counselor Wolf is still having some issues with her eyes and is joining us remotely. Thank you. Next, the mayor has asked that we move the Dillon Hotel, briefing up, and then the next one's in order because he really wanted to be here for the Pike Ride Hub briefing. So does anyone have any objections to moving those? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and get started then with the Dillon Hotel. And Roy and Juan, I believe you guys are going to be briefing that. Thank you. Elena. Yeah, Elena gave them the heads up.
Yeah, and pretty much Juan will cover the Dillon Motel PowerPoint.
Juan Alvarez, Mobility and Parking Director. I will be going over the Dillon Motel. Just waiting to get the slide up.
So on, just to confirm, the expected outcome from this briefing is the recommendation on whether to keep the one building or not, or is there additional outcomes that you'd like?
Just a duplex that we'll be looking at.
So that's the only expected guidance that you're looking for from council at this point.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we are preparing to the demolition process for the Dillon Hotel, we're looking at repurposing some of the buildings, and we wanted to go slide by slide to show you where we're at. This first slide is we're looking at keeping this building here that's going to be potentially for use for restrooms, the bike storage hub for personal belongings. And we have the design group currently right now from OLC that's currently working on our map building. That's going to be looking at this building for redesign. This is another portion of the building that we like to keep for the mobility and parking storage. This is going to be used for storage for a kiosk, spare parts, cones, anything that we can use for special events.
Juan, can I interrupt for a second? The
Sure.
building is also going to be maybe a place where we will have the parking attendant there. We'll be able to answer questions and stuff. Is that correct?
Correct. That is another option where we can have an attendant here that could be used for anytime visitors come, if they need information, directions. We're looking at having an attendant here to help guide that process. This is a building we're looking at. This is a duplex building. And one of the considerations of keeping this building is for potentially use it for office space. We could use it for educational purposes. And for some of we would like to also use it for possibly for a concierge also is another idea. So if, people sort of like using it like for like the Chamber of Commerce does for if they would want to pass out maps, distribute, just looking for directions, this would be another opportunity for it. If we were to demolish the building, there wouldn't be much of an idea for to use it for parking stalls. It would be very limited. We could potentially use it for possibly EV, installing some EV stations, but it would be more of a use it for a community office space. And that's why we wanted to bring forward to you to have that discussion. And, these were our thoughts, but we also wanted to explore your thoughts and your feedback of what you think would be this building for potential use. These are, as you see here, these are you have upstairs and downstairs, and they both have both restroom, kitchen, and office space. And we would like to discuss what your thoughts are of this duplex building.
Thanks, Juan. Questions? John?
So you were thinking the duplexes, the first building you showed us would be restrooms?
It would be restrooms, a combination of using it for also potential pollination station. It would also be used for storage, to store personal belongings. And so it would be a combination of those.
Right, and so we kind of figure out that the plumbing is in good enough shape there for sort of kind of commercial use in terms of the underground.
Correct. It has, currently, right now, it does have water. It's got gas and electric
That's
running through
great.
this building.
That's
So,
great. Okay, thank you.
Natalie,
yes, Natalie.
I have a question. How does it work? I mean, it's a city-owned property, like with ADA compliance and things like that. Like, I'm just concerned that, that we might not be able to use it the way we would maybe want to use. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, and that's why we're having our design, who is OLC, who's currently working at the map building, that's currently going to be looking at that as well.
Okay.
To make sure it's ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you.
Judith.
I was just gonna say, what we'd probably have to do is just have a vaulted ceiling, because you couldn't have the upstairs, because we'd have to put in an elevator, which we cannot do, unless if there were certain things that we could put up there that didn't require ADA compliance.
Thank you, Juan. So I've walked over there like 3 times now, and I'm certainly okay with, Natalie addressed the ADA question that I had. And I don't see that if we were to demolish the building, there's really much use in that little corner for much of anything. So I don't mind, the city wanting to use those buildings. My only issue is, God, they're ugly. They're so unsightly. So I do hope in your plan, the building that you want to use for restrooms, that's pretty decent looking building, but I hope
Right.
that you have beautification in your plan for those 2 buildings if we keep both of them there.
We do, and you're right.
Pretty
Like,
horrible.
it's very limited. It's an odd area where it's currently located. So even if we were to put parking stalls or EV charging stations, it's a very tight area. And it'd be very limited in the use if we were to demolish it.
I
How
have a
many-
question.
Are you currently, oh, Julie, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure how to jump in. How many EV charging stations would we be able to put in the space if the duplex were removed?
Probably 3 to 4.
And then you said it would be best if we eliminate the building to use it for EV charging as opposed to parking because the spots would be too difficult to use for regular parking. Did I understand that right?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Did you say we cannot use any of that space for parking?
We can use it for parking, but we're probably looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 parking stalls.
Is
In
that
that
in
area.
addition to the EV charging stations?
No, it's either one or the other. 6 to 8 parking stalls or 4 EV stations.
Okay, thank you.
So, go ahead, Judith.
Just remembered the question and I forgot. The thing about that building is there's no curb cut there. So you really couldn't put parking stalls there. I mean, you certainly could do things like EV charging station, bike lockers, picnic table, something like that. My concern is, have we looked into the cost, what this is going to cost to refurbish that building and make it usable? Because I didn't see that price tag anywhere in the memorandum. So
That's to be determined. Right now, what we have is the demolition cost of what it would cost to demolish the duplex along with the other parts of the building that we're planning on demolishing.
Currently, how many parking spaces are you looking at for the entire site?
Currently, with the trees that we have in place, it's about 113. But that can change depending on how much more space we want to add to it. from the back end of the property.
Okay, and I guess one thing I'm just used to with these sorts of projects in Manitou is to have some sort of community engagement to look at uses and so on. Is anything like that planned for this project?
We're still looking at the planning phases of the layout, how we could best accommodate traffic going through, with the egress and ingress. And also looking at our trams, looking at for potential pickup and drop off areas. So we're looking at a combination of things.
So as I understand it, your immediate need is just whether to demolish the building or retain the building for future use.
For future use, correct.
Okay, because you're in the middle of demolition and that's just a quick turnaround guidance that you need.
Correct. Right.
Okay, so Judith, go ahead.
Were you done? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Was any consideration given to keeping the office and demolishing these two buildings and using that for a combination purpose? I asked only because the aesthetics and placement of that office, you could certainly put parking around. Had that been considered, keeping the office and taking these two buildings down and putting parking there, or EV charging stations or bike lockers?
We did, and because of we want to be able to have good traffic flow, during slow times and even the busy times. So we did look at that thoroughly.
Okay, just too many parking spaces would have been sacrificed there?
Oh, it's a combination of that and also the trees, because one of the things that we want to do is we do want to keep as many trees as we can and not take them out, because if we were to do that, then it would require us to remove a lot of the trees, and that's something we did not want to do. Or at least explore other options
I see.
before we
Thank you.
did that.
Okay.
Roy.
Yeah, I do want to bring up that we are in discussions with CDOT in the area for egress, ingress. It's a challenge because of coming off Highway 24. We're going to have a problem when they go east off the ramp, whether they're coming from they can come from two directions. And so we anticipate a long queuing going west, when they're going east, and it's going to back up. So that's one concern right now with CDOT we're talking about. So thinking about those buildings, we probably have to consider the turnaround for the bus where they can pull into safely, pick up people. So even if it doesn't become a parking area, it may be needed for the shuttle to have a safe place to pick up folks. So that's, if we can't use that, then we have to determine other parts within the parking lot that we take away from parking spaces for actually the shuttle, probably the pull off of Manitou Avenue. Because as you know, with the incline and the COG folks and visitors using Hiawatha, there's already a line, but there's a lot of room for people to be safely waiting for the bus. This area is a little more challenging for that. So whether we keep the buildings or not determines too on what we're going to need in turnaround radius for the buses, how much room we need for them. And that's still being determined. But the biggest thing, if you want us to try to save it, then we probably should know now if you think we should try, and then we still have to work through these things, because we will have the demo team out there and it's cheaper to do it now than to bring them back later. So it's kind of looking at through this whole process on what we need to do to move forward on this 1-2 buildings. Now, the bathrooms I think are perfect for bathrooms in a great place, nice red brick, perfect. But the other two, the little one's not too bad, but it also kind of gets in the way as well on a turnaround radius, which we don't have that yet. And that's taken some time right now with CDOT and the engineers. So.
John.
So the three buildings, the smallest one is about 350 square feet, my calculations from the assessor's webpage.
I didn't get that square footage exactly for the small building,
Okay.
but I can.
Well,
get that
anyway,
for
I
you.
was just measuring them. I noticed the card is a little lackadaisical on the assessor's webpage. And then the 2-story building, the combined square footage of that appears to be about 1,800 square feet. And then the building you're speaking of for restrooms and whatnot is about 750, roughly speaking.
Mhm.
my consternation about kind of this configuration is, I guess I kind of find that 350 square foot building in front there. I think it's sort of an eyesore. Seems like it provides sort of kind of a maybe unsafe situation in terms of line of sight from the street, in terms of what's going on behind the buildings, you know, to the side and whatnot. And I guess I'm just really skeptical in terms of, I think this facility ought to look really fantastic. And I think that 350, to me, that just seems to be really marginal use, and architecturally and just placement and everything seems to be really awkward in terms of what's going on around it. So it just seems like it just adds a really yucky element from the previous, you know, motel use. And who knows why that little building is there. That was probably the first, it's probably the oldest building of those groups of three. You know, I think when I looked it up before we took it over, the assessor records were a little more clear about what date in terms of those things happened. So that would be my comment, is that little 350 square foot building just seems to me really a real challenge to work around from the standpoint of sight lines, you know, just making it look decent and stuff like that. I think the other buildings are pretty easy to adapt.
Any other comments? I would say that I would ask, how much will it cost to demolish it now if we decided to demolish it versus how much it would cost if we held out for a while until plans were more set in concrete to demolish it?
Currently, right now, if we don't demolish it, it's about $61,000. And it's an additional $11,000 to demolish it.
I don't quite understand that.
So it comes out to about 74,000, close to 74,000 to demolish the duplex building.
So if we
with
demolished
everything
it
else.
now, while they're demolishing everything else, it would cost $74,000. And if we demolished it later, it would cost $74,000.
I didn't get the price for later, this just currently right now.
Okay.
Like if we were to demolish it, it'd be about 74,000. If we didn't demolish it, it would be 61,000.
Right.
I have a
So it's
question.
possible if they have to come back out, that it's gonna cost more because they have to remobilize. So if we do it now, we're saving 11,000 because we're just adding it to this price. But if we had to come back, you know, a few weeks later and demolish it, I'm sure they're gonna charge us more than the 11,000.
Okay. My thing is that I think that we're always a little short on community meeting spaces in Manitou. So that would tip me toward waiting and seeing, but I don't really know. The library will add some community space. We'll have the community space here. Not sure what's going to happen with Hiawatha Gardens. So I'm a little hesitant to demolish it in the event that it might be useful. So that's my 2 cents. So let's go around the room, and Judith, what's your thought?
Well, in my perfect world, I'd want to demolish both of those buildings off the street, and I'll give you my rationale. You've got concrete, then you've got blacktop, and then you've got these two oddly situated structures that I agree with Counselor Shada that this is an opportunity to really do this right and make it beautiful and pleasing and aesthetically look great. And I think the bathroom building does that. And I guess, so in my perfect world, I would take both of those down. We need more green space, more trees planted there, more shade for people to sit. So it's just so unsightly from the street. I think we can do better. I don't know if we can maybe repurpose one of the other rooms, other buildings that for a parking attendant. But if that's the first thing you see, even if you fix it up, and also how they're situated with that little, thing, that little building in front and the one in back, and you've got to walk around, and none of that makes sense to me. I go for removing both of them. Thank you.
Michelle?
I agree. With removing both of the smaller buildings.
You want to demolish both the smaller buildings? Even, okay, that's a different course of action that you guys are bringing up now. So, Natalie?
I actually agree with that too. I'm afraid with the community building, once we start investing and trying to make it ADA compliant, we're going to spend a lot of money trying to make it work. And I don't know that there's a guarantee it'll work. So I'm pretty comfortable with
So you want to
demolishing both.
demolish both as well?
Sure.
John?
I would be opposed to demolishing an 1,800 square foot building. I think if we wanted to, we could repurpose the second floor for some kind of low income housing. Seems like to me, the community is, stepped up to have, 43. It seemed like to me that upper floor could be one fairly nice unit. It's currently split up into 2 up there. We wouldn't have to make it ADA compliant. Okay. I think this ADA compliant thing is a whole, have to build, these kinds of things to be ADA compliant. This is an existing use. To me, I think certainly the building that needs to go is this little building, this tiny little thing in the front. I think that's a huge eyesore. I think those other 2 buildings certainly can be readapted. I think they're in pretty good shape. And I think the first floor of that front building would be an excellent welcome center. Okay, parking attendant, that type of thing there. And I think there's more storage or types of stuff that needs to be, I think that could be tucked into that rear building in terms of the one we're talking about repurposing for the restrooms and whatnot. I think if we've got too much square footage in there, 760 for restrooms, it's, we can do a little bit of storage in there. So I would object to us taking down 1,800 square feet. I think I think that building and the one on the back, but that tiny one, that definitely needs to go. Thank you.
Julie?
Oh, thank you. I agree with removing the first small building that's in the front. And I really don't have enough information to have a strong feeling one way or the other about the other 2 buildings. I'm hesitant about the concept of turning the second floor into low-income housing without having a lot more information on what that would involve. But I appreciate the need to have at least one building there for, restrooms and storage and so forth. I'm not as concerned about the community space because it sounds, and maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but it sounds to me like we'll have community space at Hiawatha in addition to the library and City Hall, as Nancy mentioned. So my position is to remove the ugly building right in front. And then I'm also curious, though, are there any asbestos concerns here?
We do have that asbestos. We're currently working on getting that removed, and it's currently in 4 of the buildings at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I would support Counselor Shada's position as well. So it looks like we've got a split vote here. I shouldn't say vote.
I could be
guidance.
persuaded to agree with removing the small building in front and retaining the 2-story building. If could that 2-story building accommodate what you had planned for the smaller building in front? Could that be part of a workaround you could do if you eliminated that smaller building?
Absolutely, yes.
So
We can
there could
use
be a
one of
parking
them.
attendant in there, and there can be Chamber of Commerce information and maybe a small community space. Because as I look, and I appreciate that idea because when I walked around there, I thought, oh my gosh, it was hard to separate the 2 because they're so close to each other. And I think
Right.
there's just literally a tiny space between the smaller building and the big one, but I certainly could be persuaded to hang on to the 2-story building for now and demolish the small building in front. That I could work with that.
No, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Nancy, one other
Go
comment.
ahead, John.
You know, calculating the value of that 2-story building, that's a $500,000 building. That's a $500,000 building. It has a perfectly good roof. Okay. It has some window and door aesthetic sort of kind of challenges, you know what I mean? But blowing through that on 2 sides and kind of giving that sort of kind of a little bit of a, you know, Southwestern or some kind of a feel for or whatever, to me, it seems like pretty minor modifications. So that's what bothers me about just erasing a 2-story building. That, you know, it appeared, you know, that's a $500,000 building in today's market at least.
So if
Yeah, I agree.
Michelle,
I'm willing to change what I just said. So if we could please keep the duplex and get rid of that smaller building.
okay, so it sounds like we're going with the recommendation that you had to demolish the smallest building
Sounds okay. Thank you.
and continue with the plans for the rest of the sites. Because I'm sure we're going to be very interested in what's happening, because that's a huge investment at this point. Roy?
Right.
Do you want us to come back when we get an idea of the cost of that duplex to keep it? I did hear from the owners, and this was after they sold it. They didn't have to tell me this. They said it actually is in good shape. They have very few problems with that duplex. I mean, it is structurally sound, like Mr. Shada said. It's very good building structurally. We don't see any water leaks in there. It just looks really good. But cost may play a part of this if it's going to cost a lot to do something with it. So probably need to come back and talk to you about that part of it. So, okay.
Thank you. I was expecting the mayor to be here by now, but he's not. So if okay, we can do that. That was not in what I've been informed on, but fine. It's pretty straightforward. So we'll wait just a couple more minutes. And I thought I had that Dole was presenting this. No?
No, we're doing it, and it's a very simple, we're applying for a grant to replace the water meters. It's part of the Schneider Electric program that you approved us to do. This is a very competitive grant. It is, you know, we've got to get it submitted by next Tuesday. Then we'll see if we can get 50% of it. Then we'll look for a grant to do the other percentage. It's about a $3 million project to replace all of our water meters, which are 15 years old to 18 years old. Before we do that, I do want to mention, we met with them today, and we would do a test of 50 meters to really ensure that they are not operating as we anticipate before we were to incur this cost. And if we got 50 meters and they all operated at 100%, we would decline the grant. But we need to submit it or else we're told no right up front. So we just need support to be able to go ahead and submit it, and then we'll move forward.
John?
I guess I would like to see kind of the cost benefit analysis. To me, the size of these meters, the amount of metal that's in them, the fact that they're literally going to just go to the crusher and whatnot, they're not going to be reused in any way. I guess I would really like to see, you know, the cost benefit to the city of this. If we've got, you know, I think that is a stewardship issue that we ought to be thinking about, as opposed to just because they're inaccurate by, you know, 2% or 5% or whatever. I think that's I think what we need to figure out is, over a period of time, what is sort of kind of the drift of them and what's our cost of kind of maintaining them and keeping them in good repair. I guess I've not heard from staff that the existing set of meters, that there's just all sorts of issues in terms of running out and replacing them. Is that not true?
So right now there's an estimate and it's estimated, and that's why we're going to do 50 meters and do a test, that we're losing about $150,000 a year. Because what happens with the meters is the inside gets slower. And so instead of charging for a gallon, you may only be charging for a half of a gallon. Right now, we have a fairly large water loss, and that could be due to the meters. That's one of the things that we're checking. So once that inside starts slowing down, you can't correct that. So those are the the lifespan of meters are about 15 to 18 years. If we pull 50 of them and they all say they're doing great, or we're only losing 1%, then we'll say, we don't want to take this grant. So there's still some due diligence that we need to do, but we've got to submit the grant by next week for
Well,
that.
Can we do this test with just the current inventory we have of spare meters to pump a known amount of water through them and see how accurate they are?
We won't pump the spare meters. You have to pull them, the ones that are being used, because the spare ones have not been used, so they will be 100%.
Well,
You have
I
to
know.
pull-
So what
yeah.
if we just switched out some of those for the spares that we keep and do a test up in the shop and just run, see what,
And that's what we'll be doing. That's
Okay.
part of our due diligence through this
all right,
program.
that sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, I am very concerned about water loss, so I'm supportive of this, but let's go around and hear what other folks think. Judith?
Thank you. Well, so, when our goal with Schneider and doing an energy audit was to make sure that we're doing sustainable best practices in this town, right? That we're doing the most climate and energy efficient systems that we can put in place. I haven't heard, and I didn't see in this white paper that was really the goal of this, is that they're really not energy efficient. I'm hearing more that we're losing revenue from the water loss. So I'm in the camp of Counselor Shada. I'm, for a price tag of 3 million, and it's my understanding these would be replaced with digital meters. Is there, the word digital was in this? I mean, are these?
One of the things we talked about today is, as we do water conservation, is looking to see what it would cost to also have, if you look on another utility, CSU, you can look on and see exactly what your water usage is every day and say, okay, I need to drop it. Or there's a leak and we get notified that, okay, there's a leak. So instead of a $900 bill, you only have a $200 bill. And those are the things that the new meters can do. But we're also looking, can we afford to bring in the software for that? And it looks like it's about 24,000 for that software. So there's still a lot of due diligence that we need to do, but we've got to submit this grant if we want to apply for this one. And then we can deny it if we go through the due diligence and say, no, we don't need it, but we can't deny it if we don't apply. But a big portion of this is water savings. As we go forward. And if you've ever had a leak, right, and you don't know about it for 30 days, you can end up with a bill of 900, and we've had that happen before. And this does a quick notification.
Roy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just on the meters themselves, the question on they're mechanical meters now. So that's why they wear and they go slower as the mechanics break down. The new ones would be a digital model and they don't have that problem. So that's the difference between the two. Just so there's an understanding of that.
And do they last longer then? Is their shelf life greater than 15 to 20 years?
The most what I can find is 20 years and then they decline. But a lot of cities change them out. What I saw on average about 8.8 years, which is probably too quick. So, 15 to 18 years is probably smart to start thinking about that, because in 5 years, can we replace them? And can we do it now? And we have that grant. It might be a good time to think about it.
So I'm not opposed for us moving forward with applying for the grant. I guess where I'm coming from is I want us to do more due diligence on this. And I also want to see that environmental sustainability piece, not just looking at how can we, capture more revenue by charging, our residents and then I know that's part of the mix, but I need to see more of that data before I'm convinced.
And part of it is we're losing a lot of revenue because we're treating water. We're treating a substantial amount of water that we're not getting revenue for. So it's costing every ratepayer to treat that water, but then we're not getting the revenue in return. And so that's one of the things that we're looking for is this where we're getting water loss, or is there another location? So it's kind of doing the due diligence to identify where the water loss is coming from. And Schneider is helping us go through that, which we've never had that opportunity in the past.
And it's my understanding that this was a really top priority for Schneider coming in. That this was one of the top things that they flagged that we should be working on. Bruce, is that my understanding also?
That is correct. And the other thing is let's say that Schneider says we should save this amount. Remember, if we don't in 2 years, then they have to pay for it 100%. So that's the other thing. So they're really doing their due diligence to make sure those numbers come through, because if not, they have to pay for it. And that's part of the contract.
Roy?
Yeah, just because of when we take these out of service, where do they go? And it's something we can look at and talk to the manufacturer of the ones we possibly buy, is how do they recycle them and where we can do that, even if it means taking them apart, different components. There's always ways to do that. So that'd be something we can look into as a city, and how we recycle these old parts and not just dump them.
Thanks. Michelle?
I am for applying for this grant.
Thanks. Natalie?
I'm also in favor of applying for this grant.
Thanks. John? And John, you weren't here for the discussion. Do you have any?
Yeah, I'll pass.
Okay. Julie?
I'm in favor of applying for the grant. It sounds like we'll be hearing back from staff if we get the money to inform whether we should go forward based on the 50 tests that you do. So it sounds like there's no downside to making the commitment at this point of submitting the grant application.
Yeah, and I agree. I thought that this was a no-brainer when I read it. I've always been concerned about our loss of water within the city, and so I think that this is very appropriate to pursue. So with that, got your guidance to pursue the grant. Thank you, Denise.
I do want to mention our goal is on the 24th during our work session. If we can pull everything together, we're going to give you an update of the water program and kind of what we're needing to do and the loans, et cetera, that we've been doing. So you have a overall budget perspective. We're hoping to pull that together by the 24th. If not, then we'll put it on another work session and do that in the very near future as we're looking at the entire water department and the enterprise.
Thank you. Okay, for whatever record there is, the mayor has arrived, so I will hand back the gavel to him. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for indulging me. I had a mayoral thing that I committed to in December on a Wednesday, and then it got postponed until tonight. So, the group only meets on Tuesdays. So thank you. Pike Ride. Okay, now we're on the Pike Ride Hub. So we have Tara and we have Juan. Okay.
Right.
You have the floor. Thank you.
You just go ahead and give your names and
Juan
Position.
Alvarez, a Mobility and Parking Director.
Tara McCarthy, Executive Director of Pike Ride.
Okay, so as we move forward, and we're working together collectively with our map board, I want to get the slide up. We're collectively working together to make our city more walkable and more bikeable. And one of the other important thing that we want to do is also improve the quality of the health and the quality of life of our residents. And one important thing that we want to do is also focus on mitigating the traffic congestion. And one of the key things to do this is to add additional bike hubs. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah so that she can begin her presentation. Right. You can change it.
Perfect.
Well, hi all. Thanks for hearing me out tonight. And I hope that we have a good conversation. And I'm really happy to receive feedback and just talk through as I go along or just wait until the end. So just to go over some Pike Ride use. And so the data that you see here is for trips that have started or ended in Manitou Springs. And since we first started in 2021 through the end of last year, we've had 4,409 trips, again, that start or ended here. And last year alone, we had over 1,603 trips. And those 1,603 trips equates to 5,517 miles. And I think when you have that number in your mind, keep the known fact that we don't have a lot of bikes here in Manitou Springs. So when you think about the number of trips, that's actually really, really high per the daily average of bikes here. When Juan talks about the wellness of the community, we have a nice little calculator to estimate calories burned for those trips. It's just over 350,000 calories burned. And if you look to the right here, this is a strict heat map of where these trips started or ended for Pike Ride in 2023. So that's any trip that started in Manitou or ended in Manitou. So you can see high use in Manitou based on the thickness of the purple colors, but folks do travel all the way east of Academy, as you can see on the right, and they do travel quite far south and all the way north. I believe that's Garden of the Gods up there. All right, so kind of getting into the nerdy stuff. Weekends, we saw definitely the highest use of the system. Saturday is high here. That correlates to Colorado Springs use. Saturday is the highest use in Colorado Springs as well. But what's really interesting is if you calculated the total of Monday through Friday trips, it essentially equates the weekend use as well. And so obviously, weekends, you're free, you have time to do things, you have time to get out on a bike. But I do think it is very interesting that weekdays basically equate weekend use. And just to talk about time of day in which we see the most rides happen, it is kind of early to late afternoon. So we definitely see a spike at 1 p.m. and then we start declining around the 6 p.m. hour. But definitely that afternoon time frame is a high use. All right, so currently in Manitou Springs, we have 3 hubs with a total of 20 bike racks. We usually average about 6 or 7 bikes here per day. All of those are within a 1-minute walk of Mountain Metro Transit bus stops. There's a lot of bike share studies that show bike share hubs next to public transportation increases use of both systems. It's actually pretty high increase for a public transit system. I think it's about 2%, which when you hear that number is kind of low, but when you think about a public transportation system like Mountain Metro, 2% is actually quite a significant gain. And our proposal here tonight, we're proposing an additional 5 hubs, which would bring us up to 8 total hubs in Manitou Springs. And this increases the total number of bike racks that Pike Ride has by 27. So that brings us up to 47 public bike racks. And I use the word public because these bike racks are not just for Pike Rides. They are available to be used by the public. They're actually really secure, heavy duty racks that work really, really nicely with the e-bike rebate program that you all have, just because those bikes do tend to be a heavier weight and they need a little bit more reinforcement than some of the green. They're very beautiful bike racks on the main strip, but they're a little bit light when you talk about e-bike use. And so these hubs, they are planned within both a 2-minute and a 3-minute walk of Mountain Metro bus stops. Again, trying to connect people's ability to travel not just by bike, but also by bus, expanding their ability to really use public transportation as a main mode of transit. This you can't see on the left here, but the 27 bikes do increase public bike parking with just the Pike Ride bike racks by about 170% increase. So quite a bit. All right, so when we're talking about the increased number of hubs, the increased number of hubs come with an increased number of bikes. And so we're looking to It is just over double the number of hubs. It is going to end up tripling the number of bikes that would be in town on any given day. That is our goal, at least 18 bikes in town on any given day. And when you look at the average miles per trip to or from Manitou Springs, it's 3.44 miles, which is almost double our system-wide average trip, which is 1.71 miles per trip. So people are really using this to go much further than normal in Colorado Springs. So when you look at tripling the number of bikes, we get to about 3,000 trips annually after installation. I didn't do a pure doubling here just to be on the conservative side. I do actually think we'll exceed 3,200 trips just based on how the system has generally worked for us in the past. And when you take that 3,000 trips and you multiply it by the average trip average mile per trip, we get to about 10,000 miles expected for full installation of these hubs, as well as tripling the number of bikes. Again, I think this is conservative. I just didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I do think we'll see at least 11,000 miles out of it. So this is kind of the really fun stuff that I love. The EPA has this really great emissions calculator. And so when we look at the reduced carbon emissions from utilizing Pike Ride, I think Roy handed out a document, but we really dive into mode of travel when not using a Pike Ride for our general users. And so we actually calculate emissions based on that. So the numbers that you're seeing here are based on percentage of people who would have walked if Pike Ride wasn't available, who would have driven a car, who would have taken a bus, et cetera. So these numbers here are not a general number for bike share. It is specific to the Pike Ride system overall. And so for 2023, as you can see, we basically reduced carbon emissions for 1,626 miles if traveled in a passenger fuel-based vehicle. And that is equivalent to a drawdown of 10.5 seedlings grown for 10 years. And I really love that statistic when you talk about Manitou Springs. I've already heard pollinator stations once tonight. I know that was a big thing last year and it's super cool. And so with the increase of miles traveled with what we're proposing here, that would bring us to a carbon reduction seen if, again, same passenger vehicle over 3,000 miles or 19.6 seedlings grown for 10 years. So in addition to improving air quality, there is an absolute public health positivity from public bike share. That same thing with the e-bikes that you all have supported through rebates. But again, it reduces traffic congestion. You know, we took 5,500 miles out of the system last year, or 1,600 trips by vehicle to Manitou Springs. And general studies show that most people receive an improved mental health from being both outside and active. I've hyperlinked some studies by the National Institute of Health, UC Davis. All of these studies show that there's an improvement in rates for both depression, anxiety, being outside reduces anger. Bikes really are such a great way to improve the community in such a number of ways when you talk about individual or community. Then there's some death information. I won't go into that, but riding a bike does improve mortality rates. There is, and I'm going to look at my notes so I don't mess this up, but an increase in physical activity across all bike share trips in 1 year reduced 737 disability adjusted life years. So that's basically 1 full year of health. So 737 years of health that public bike share trips have improved in the US. And then when we talk about overall healthcare savings, there's studies that have shown that it saves US healthcare about $36 million a year. We are really proud to be the public bike share in Colorado Springs, Old Colorado City, and Manitou Springs. We're also really proud of the fact that we have transportation equity programs that go hand in hand with someone just borrowing a bike to say, go downtown, go have a beer, go out to dinner. We have two programs and I'll really kind of focus on We Ride. So We Ride is for low income residents who qualify for federal assistance programs. If an individual receives Medicaid, TANF, SNAP, unemployment, et cetera, they're eligible for our We Ride program, which is $20 a year for 90 minutes of ride time for free. There's no additional fees unless they go over that 90 minutes. And we found 90 minutes to be really good for these participants. And these folks are able to use the public bikes. So when we talk about increasing the number of bikes in Manitou Springs, that opens up the door to more low-income residents having access to transportation for $20 a year. That comes out to be, I think it's like $164 per month. And so again, there's such power in bikes. And this is a program that we would love to push. We have folks who are participants in Colorado Springs who use this program for gainful employment. They are able to maintain a job because they have access to transportation at their fingertips. Mountain Metro might not be a stop near their home. It might not be available on their time schedule for their job. So this really provides quite a bit of independence for people who need the assistance. I'll kind of touch on the other equity program that we have. The other equity program, and the mayor and I talked about this a couple times last year. Natalie, I pinged you earlier. Well, that was actually last year at this point in time. But we have a Pike Ride Plus leasing program, which allows a similar participant, but someone who lives in a disproportionately impacted area of our communities, to lease an e-bike for $25 a month. That leased bike also comes with additional storage options. It's a rear rack, waterproof panniers, so the individual can carry 55 pounds on the bike. We had someone who is he was using it about 40 miles round trip per day to go to a construction contract job. So he's actually able to use this bike to carry tools. He rented an extra battery, so he was able to swap the battery midday to make sure that he got home okay. This is a grant that we applied for, and sharing this tonight, but we did receive a 50% award of our grant program that we submitted for Manitou Springs High School to have 15 bikes at the school. We figured we'd probably split that between staff and students just so that we could build a cycling culture there. The superintendent and I have one final conversation to get through before we accept that award, but these are programs that we can do if Pike Ride is in Manitou Springs. And I think it's really important, again, that a bike can be such a powerful tool for somebody's independence, financial welfare, and then the health and benefit of the community as well. Economic impact, there's absolute studies that show that riders spend at neighborhood businesses because of the access provided by bike share. So you talk about hubs being next to businesses. Those businesses typically see more people not only visiting, but also spending. When we talk about time savings, it might be hard to really kind of equate riding a bike with time savings because, right, you're riding a bike that has to be slower. But when you talk about short to midterm trips, you're talking about a savings because there's not traffic. You can take a sidewalk, you can take a bike path. And so that time savings really does benefit overall productivity. You talk about folks who might be volunteering to help you set up a pollinator station. They now have time because they have independence of transportation. And in most cases takes less time because they're not dealing with traffic congestion. You also talk about the ability of maybe a student being able to take part in after-school tutoring or after-school social clubs or sports clubs. So there's a lot, again, that goes into the not only economic enhancement, but public health as well. We do an annual survey every year, and over 50% say that they did choose to go to a business because a Pike Ride Hub was next to that business. So here we get to what we're actually proposing. So this is a map of our existing hubs. Those are in the purple circle with the bikes. The proposed hubs are in green circles with the bikes. And then we're also proposing some signage that will allow us to alert more people to the fact that there's public bike share. Right now, we don't have a lot of signage that's doing this, and I think this is one of the key things that's going to allow us to get more rides. So going in an east to west fashion, we are talking, and I might kind of roll through the slides here. I think it might be a little bit easier. Okay, so you can see on the upper right, that's El Paso Lane. That is at the ball field. That is our first easterly hub that we're interested in installing. This doesn't take up any parking. There's good concrete there. And then we move to, and Juan, I might need you to jump in just because this is not in great order, but we then move, I think, to the Wichita parking lot. This is in the back corner on Lover's Lane. It is, again, not taking up any parking. It allows us to keep bikes on Lover's Lane off of the main drag, away from more traffic, and it just provides a nicer ride for people. We then come up to Canyon Ave. This is on the right-hand side across from the parking lot. There's a great strip of concrete already poured. This just, again, gets us more parking. When you talk about parking, whether cars or bike parking, it increases that parking availability at Canyon. We are still talking about Soda Springs and the hub there. To my understanding, there's an improvement plan in place for Soda Springs. And so we don't really want to do anything at the current time, given that there's probably going to be some infrastructure that changes in that location. But we are interested in hitting Soda Springs because it's the western side of the business area and it's a park. That makes sense, right? Being active, recreating, going to a park, that makes sense for us. And then we've also found a great location up on Ruxton. This is the old Mountain Metro, and I might have that incorrect, but it is an old bus stop. And we have tested this a number of times with our bikes. We feel it's safe. This might be more seasonal based on some of the snow melt and ice that happens on Ruxton, but this would be great for any tourists that may have missed the shuttle or didn't get enough room on the shuttle if they want to go up top. And just as a reminder, we currently have hubs at Lulu's, Hiawatha, and then Shriver. I already talked a little bit about signage, but we are interested, since we've determined that being off the main drag is better for pretty much everybody. We do want to install signage on the main drag to alert people that there are bikes off the main drag. This is just a design. I figured it might be interesting. Roy and I also have talked about whether we can make them artsy, like should it be an old bike wheel and kind of make it more to the theme of Manitou. So this is just current iteration that we have. So now the financial support. We really appreciate the financial support that we've been given in the past. That's allowed us to stand up the system. It's allowed us to maintain the system for about 2.5 years. And it's really helped connect the two cities. When you talk about people riding more than double, people want to come here. They want to come see Garden of the Gods. They want to shop. It has definitely reduced traffic congestion, improved air quality, and again, there's quite a bit of improvement of quality of life. And so I've been asked to make this very clear. So we're proposing a $35,000 annual investment. That's the total. That's not plus $75,000. That is the total. And what that covers for this year is the equipments and parts costs, which is about just under $16,000. This does not include if we have to pour cement. It doesn't include if we're looking for bollards to protect the hub from cars or other things of that nature. We would ask for the city to pour concrete. With the proposals that we have, there's no concrete being poured in the 5 proposed, but just in case something needs improvement, we'd ask the city for that. And then we've also talked about whether the city can provide bollards. The proposed hubs need 11 bollards. It's not a huge amount. It just, again, protects the equipment. In this $35,000 is the operations cost to maintain the system. I left this as a $14,000 to $17,000 mark because we expect staff to be here 3 times a week maintaining the field. On high weeks, on high tourism weeks, we expect 4 times to be out here. So there's a little bit of flex in that number because of that. When you look at this, think about a public transportation system, fare box recovery rate. Our fares don't cover our full operations. That's why there's a city ask here. Now, when you look at this on a per mile basis for that 10,000 miles, it does come out to be a subsidy of $3.39. And I think I've already talked about our transportation equity programs that we have available, but those funds help us support those programs. We do a number of coupons through the chamber. We do bike valets for city events. We have talked about whether we could provide a free coupon to drive parking in lots this year. That's something that we haven't done in the past, but something that we're certainly willing to look at whether that fits. We've also talked whether there's a downtown business employees discount membership so folks can travel to and from home. So there's a lot built into this and a lot that we can talk about.
I do want to mention that the 35,000 also covers the complete inventory of everything that we have already. All the bike racks that we have already, it does cover all that inventory. I also want to mention that we did share this presentation with our map board, and they voted unanimously to for the consideration of these bike hubs.
And so that's all I have. Maybe one thing actually, the map that I showed of the proposed service area, when we expand the hubs, the service area also expands. I'm not good at my maps, so I wasn't able to do that in a amount of time to get it ready for tonight, but that does expand the service area. So please, what feedback, what questions do you have?
Okay, thank you. Let's open it up to council questions and comments. John?
I really like the expansion of all these bike hubs. I use my bike almost every single day. And even though because I own my own bike, I don't use the bike ride. My only comment about the 122 Lovers Lane is that is an exit point in that parking lot. Okay. There's a lot of traffic of people coming and going out of there. I think the location of that actually ought to be moved to where the current bike rack is up in the front. There's supervision up there with our ambassadors, which are absolutely totally key to our visitors and people arriving and having a sense of safety and where to use restrooms. That increases supervision. I can see that as a location for somebody very quickly leaving in a truck and doing a chop. That is that's not a great location. Now, a sign that maybe points to that there is parking and amenities in the forward part of the Wichita lot, I think is an excellent idea along that corridor to let people know that they can enter there. But I would never, ever in 1,000 years park my bike there. Okay. And I'm just one of these types of people that I'm really sensitive to where people are, what people are doing and stuff like that. And that I think is a really theft location. And it works in the front right now where people park their bikes there. And like I said, there's an ambassador there. And so as a result, you know, if you have a nice expensive bike and whatnot, and you ask an ambassador where to park, for them to go, oh, you know, park your bike clear over there around that corner and that kind of stuff there, that's I don't think a great location. So I would tuck it right. There's an existing bike rack right up there in front. Okay. So you might even look and see whether that could just be repurposed and whatnot for your use, as opposed to having to put in all brand new infrastructure in that area. Then my only other comment is that I saw in the packet that Soda Springs Park was to be determined. And of course, I would ask the mayor's indulgence. I do have 3 locations that I would like to discuss, because I would like to see a bike hub at Park Avenue and Manitou Avenue. And so, but it's totally up to the mayor's discretion.
John, tell you what, let's give other people a chance to speak, and then we can come back to that. Okay. And there may be some similar concerns. Okay. Who would like to go next? Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to tell you how much we, the community, appreciates our partnership with Pike Ride. I think it's one of the best investments that we make for our town and our people. So glad you're here. I see a future where we add hubs, not only at Soda Springs, but I see the URA micromobility hub that we're working on and the West End around Serpentine as we, look
Yes.
to the future of Creek Walk, and hopefully in our more distant future, Higginbotham Flats Park, and have connectivity of bikes all through Manitou. So I'm supportive of the 35,000 annual investment. And thank you, Juan, for letting us know that the MAP board is unanimously on board. My only comment was I personally went and traveled to all of these locations. I did not have a real problem with the one on Lover's Lane, but I also, I mean, if there's other folks that have issues with it, I kind of liked it right off Lover's Lane there, but that's just minor. I don't really care where it goes. I'm grateful that we are wanting to install more hubs. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next.
Oh, yeah, Julie, go ahead, and then we'll do Nancy.
Oh, thank you. I just need help. Can you tell me again where the 124 Canyon Ave proposed spot is? I see the picture, but I can't visualize. Where is that?
It is on the other side of the Canyon Ave parking lot, and Roy gave me the okay on that I said that correctly. Yep.
The other side, like, so
Phone company
across,
building.
across the street where that little bench is? The built-in bench over the creek?
It is directly across from the Canyon parking lot. There is a building. It is the telephone building is what I heard. And so to my knowledge, there's no bench there. The hub would be installed there's 3 trees. And so it would be installed outside the public right away, away from the trees.
Oh, okay, I got it now. I appreciate that. I'm supportive. I agree with Counselor Shada's comments on the Lover's Lane location for safety reasons. I don't want to find out that a pedestrian got hit by a truck when he was trying to lock up his pike ride vehicle, bike, and we could avoid all of those problems by moving it forward. I also support the financial investment, and the signs are so weird to me, but I guess none of that's finalized anyway, so we don't have to see anything or say anything about them. But I'm in favor of the city making this financial commitment. I think it's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And I think Roy has a follow-on comment, so we'll hear Roy and then Nancy.
Yeah, Mr. Shada, thanks for bringing up the Wichita one. When I'm thinking about it, it's a right-hand turn only too, which makes it even more troublesome. So we'll look for a better location at the Wichita lot or in that area. Number 2, the Soda Springs hub is the one that's at Canyon right now. So we had trouble trying to find a spot at Soda Springs because a couple of the locations that we looked at, probably not great. One was kind of in at the intersection there of Park and Manitou Avenue, probably not good. We looked at the parking spot down from there on Park, that corner, but then I believe that might be a little bit out of view of where they want more lighting and the residents be able to watch it too at night and just have people around. And then with the ADA possibly at Soda Springs Park being developed, access points, which would be probably on the park side. We don't know if we want to put anything there yet until we know how that's going to look. So we have good ADA access from the parking area, also up into Soda Springs from the sidewalk. So we thought maybe that could be a good spot across from the parking lot, but I'm definitely open to ideas in Soda Springs that we haven't thought of. So that would be something to investigate further.
Yeah, and thanks for the firsthand knowledge of these areas. It's helpful when we're citing.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Nancy?
Yeah, I just think that this is a wonderful investment that can't be calculated in the cost per trip. It's just so much more than that. I'm fine to move the thing in Lover's Lane, but I really like it having it at the Wichita parking lot. My only concern is if the land is Metro District land or city land, how much flexibility we have in that regard. So, but I like having something at that lot.
It is the Metro District, so we would have to get approvals, moving it anywhere on their property.
Okay, so the proposed one that's on the briefing is still on Metro District land, or is that city? land?
Correct.
Okay, great. Well, not great, but if they're cooperating now, they'll cooperate in the future, I hope, to move it. I really like the idea of having more Manitou spin on the signs, no pun
Yeah.
intended. If you could pursue that. We talked a little bit about looking for grants to help finance all of this. I'm thrilled with the We Ride program. I think that we could probably, as a council and as a city, do a lot with that in the future. And just to see the evolution of Pike Ride. I followed it since you guys first started several years ago now, and it's so wonderful to see the evolution and the pickup of it. And mainly, I'm just excited to see hubs on the west side of Manitou, because that's something that we have not had.
Mhm.
And I'm hopeful that your conservative estimate of 3,000 trips is very, very, very conservative, because I think that they'll really pick up with West Side and Ruxton Avenue hubs. So thank you. And partnership has been wonderful. Thanks for that too.
Thank you. And if I could, sorry, go ahead, Mayor. I was just gonna say, this is 1 year of proposals. We've talked about how we can get into the neighborhoods. We're looking at a new rack design this year. That's a smaller footprint, but is still that sturdy bike rack for e-bikes. And so we're hopeful that this isn't just where we're gonna end. This is for feedback and consideration and ideas on how we really make this work to meet the goals of Manitou.
Thank you. Let's see, Michelle.
I'm in favor of the $35,000 annual investment. I do have a question in regards to the survey where it said that there were 51% said that they would go to a business because there was a Pike Ride nearby.
Mhm.
What type of businesses were they?
We didn't clarify that in the survey. We didn't indicate like whether it was a necessity or it was discretionary funding. So I can't answer that specifically, but that's maybe a good thing to add to the survey. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Nancy, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you haven't had a chance, but John is going to give us a couple other ideas here, but let's get everybody else around the table first.
Yeah,
Natalie?
so yeah, I'm excited. I'm interested in this investment. I know that the Art Center does intend on purchasing Pike Ride passes for its employees once we have the infrastructure in place to support that. So we'll be doing that. I didn't think about the Lover's Lane piece, but I do know that the bike rack in front of the Art Center gets hit pretty regularly, or at least those little barriers. So I guess it's probably a correct assumption that it would happen there as well. Yeah, I guess I'm interested in John Shada's ideas as well for Soda Springs Park, however that works.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I think everybody's had a chance here. John, you've got 3 thoughts on site locations, so
Right.
let's go ahead and hear them.
Yeah.
Okay,
You want me to go? Sure.
While they're doing that, just real quick, we'll see if they're successful. I'm sorry for the technical things. One of the things that we had talked about was putting bike racks right there at that little bear park. And to me, I guess I'm really not terribly thrilled with that particular location in terms of that little pocket park. In terms of
That's
their-
on the way west and by
Yeah,
the truck.
we're talking
okay,
about
yes.
Park Avenue
Yep.
and I really want to see something, if possible, in this proposal and this funding cycle up in that area, because I think by us getting something up in there, I think that's going to really energize our maps board and the council to try and figure out how in the world do we come up with a reasonable configuration from Lover's Lane and whatnot, all the way up to that tip.
Mhm.
And so to me, I see this as something that if we would put something up there, that might kind of really spur us to kind of really think through Park Avenue, Canyon Avenue and whatnot in terms of for bike safety and whatnot, and really kind of push the envelope. So here it is, just real quick. So these are the alternatives. If you could just go to the next slide. So the three locations that I've sort of seen us talk about is A, which is, this is looking down on Park Avenue and Manitou Avenue, which is what I call the Little Bear Park.
Yep, the
Okay.
pocket park, yep.
All right. Then B, I've seen a drawing from somebody putting it in the median.
Mhm.
And then number C is my proposed proposal. Okay, in terms of, next slide. I just think this Little Bear Park is just not a great place for cycling and stuff like that and
Yeah,
that kind of
agreed.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
I think it's a really jewel of a little pocket park.
It is
I
pretty
mean, we're
cute.
really trying to kind of light up a lot more of those kind of little things down in the URA and whatnot. And I think kind of a needless slab of concrete and whatnot there for bike parking is just not respectful of that. Next slide, please. So this is what I think it would kind of look like, which is kind of yucky. Okay, in terms of if we put one there in location A. The next slide, please. B is to stick it in the median. I think this is sort of kind of a safety and sort of kind of, that's sort of kind of a really busy intersection. Tourists are really lost. They don't know whether they're going up or down or left or right in the whole 9 yards. I just think that's not a great location that I've seen. You can go on to the next location. Next slide, please. And this is my location that I'm suggesting we light one up as a part of your configuration. There's a public easement. The yellow line there, I believe, is the property line. Everything to the left, okay, is publicly owned. All right. There's already a slab of concrete there.
Mhm.
And we have a 15-foot wide multimodal pathway right there at the Tubby's turnaround. Next slide, please. So there's the plan view in terms of where it would be on the map.
Mhm.
And then the next slide is what the bike configuration would be there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for indulging.
Thank you. Just real quick, council, anybody have responses to Mr. Shada's proposals? Okay, Nancy, you have a question?
Could, John, would there still be room to walk and ride your bike past that station as
Sorry,
you?
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Is there room still to walk and ride your bike along that avenue there?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that 15-foot wide multimodal trail
I'm
right
just
there.
I don't go up to that end of town very
Yeah.
often, so I just wanted to.
And that's
confirm.
kind of why I kind of put it there was because you can just kind of pull the bike right off on that multimodal location there. It seems like we already own it. All those areas, all A, B, and C, all require intense locations because we've got lots of underground fiber and buried stuff in that area. So we'd have to, although it would not be as easy as some of those other locations you're talking about that I think possibly are a little more underground utility free.
Mhm.
But in that particular area there, we would want to really call 811 and get locating out like crazy. Thank you.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have a question, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
I'm wondering if it would, if we did put rack in the location that Counselor Shada was just discussing there by Tubby's, would it still be necessary to have the one on Cannon, or would that be overkill?
Or would you respond or?
Yeah,
And
it's,
then Roy.
it's a really good question. Studies show that bike use in a bike share program increases exponentially when the the parking areas are within walking distance to each other. We all know that people like to go where they want to go, and that's usually 5 feet away from where they want to go. And so when you install more infrastructure such as bike racks and have more bikes available, you do see an increase in use. Again, one of our reasons that we want to be on the west side of the downtown business district, because it is that connection point. And yes, we want to expand beyond that. Maybe we looked at the zip line area as a hub location as well, but we do think being at the end of Soda Springs is important for that east-west continuity.
Well, then in terms of the budget and the $35,000 and the Pike Rides contribution, would we be able to add the hub at the location by Tubby's without increasing the cost, or would we have to eliminate one of the other hubs in order to work within our budget?
Well, if we shift what we've been working on from Soda Springs to Canyon, either way, we get to 5 hubs. So we're committed to 5 hubs with 27 bike racks. So we're here to talk about where that is best suited, and we're committed to that 27 bike rack, whether it's 5 hubs or 4 like super hubs. So we're flexible on this. We would love to put eyes on this. I would have my operations manager come out and look at this suggestion by Tubby's. From first glance, I wouldn't say no, but he is the detail person on that. And so he would have to put eyes on the ground just to make sure that that makes sense.
Is that the kind of thing that he could do fairly quickly so that you could get back to us in a week or so with whether that's an option?
Yeah, we could come out tomorrow, Thursday or Friday of this week and let you all know.
Okay, thank you. And Roy has some comments relative to this question.
Yeah, just the location A was something that was brought to Parab. It would be in a pocket park. They're really not fond of that pocket park, taking half of that away. So we kind of abandoned that one. The one in the middle of the traffic there is, of course, no different than kind of maybe Lover's Lane dangers. And I do agree, it's hard to get out of that spot going left or right. Well, right, you have the ramp there, but going left is very difficult, and there's crosswalks, and that's challenging. This seems like a great place to put it. And the only reason we have the Canyon one there was because we were trying to do the hub we already had, and we didn't put in the Bear Park because we had those issues. We decided maybe we just had to put it somewhere nearby. So, but I like the idea if it works. Looks like a great spot. But definitely willing to look at that. And I believe that the intersection one was technically approved by Pike Ride a year ago. So I would assume this one's even safer and better. So it probably won't be a problem. So.
Yeah, again, I don't see an issue with it, but I'm not a final answer on that, just with my lack of experience of installing hubs.
Thank you. I guess I've got a couple of questions here.
Mhm.
I guess first off, the We Ride program, is that the same as the leasing program you use in Southeast Colorado Springs?
No, so it's the We Ride program utilizes the public bikes, so they are available to anybody. The leasing program is an individualized, like you're leasing a car, it goes home with you. So they're different programs, and honestly, we see different uses of it. Some folks might not have the ability to store a bike in their residence. Some people might not feel comfortable storing a bike at their residence. It's also $20 a year versus $25 a month. So there's a financial difference as well. That might be a barrier for people in terms of what they can actually afford versus what they can't.
Okay, thank you. It seemed like we had maybe last fall talked about
We
that
did.
leasing program as
Yep.
when we were considering vouchers and other things that we went on with vouchers. Okay, question on one of those slides there, you had the $35,000 ask and breakdown of several things. I think it was like $15,000 for general operations, and then some other things I think were just kind of described as hardware. Now, does that include getting these hubs ready, putting the rails in the concrete, or is there
Yeah.
additional cost?
Yep. So that 15,500 really covers the equipment cost. So that's the 27 bike racks. That's the expanding concrete for the anchors, It also includes the signage. And then I did include some overages for basic bikes break, right? They're being used thousands of times. It's like your car. The longer you drive it, the more they break. They kind of fail and here or there talking about water meters. And so there's a little bit there for some parts as well.
Okay, and there was, at some point here, you had asked the city to provide concrete and bollards.
So
Which might-
concrete would only be needed if we're looking at a location that doesn't already have concrete or asphalt, which none of the proposed hubs or Councilman Shada's, thank you, proposal there, it doesn't look like there's any concrete needed or cement.
Okay, Roy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, that's correct. And just so council knows, the Shriver Park one, we did put in the concrete, came in about $3,000. So that kind of pad is about $3,000 if we ever had to do another bike ride.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Yeah, okay, so I'm thinking here that the last ask that we had from Pike Ride, we voted to provide $35,000 for general funding. I think it's 5% of your annual administrative cost. And then we approved another $20,000 for the parking hub that was supposedly going to be at Soda Springs Park, which we haven't gotten yet. So I would think we have a $20,000 credit with you still.
Well, like I said, we're committed to the 27 bike racks and 5 hubs, or however that math kind of equates. And so we do have Soda Springs, and wherever we put it, that's what Pike Ride still owes on the agreement. So we're committed to 5 hubs or 27 bike racks. Again, we're flexible on the where and when, but we still do have Soda Springs to install once we get an approved location. So that's not included on the $35,000 ask. We're going to continue to expand plus what we've already agreed to. That's a
So
good
there'll be some
question.
additional expenses.
I'm sorry?
We should anticipate some additional expenses.
No, that's everything that's already been paid for. So that just is waiting approval for a location and then it gets installed.
So then the $35,000 ask is for 2024, is that it, or?
So to my knowledge, the past agreement ends in April. Roy, I might need to check on that, April or May of this year. So the $35,000 gets us through basically April or May of this year through April or May of next year in terms of operating expenses. And so we will install those hubs once we get them approved. Take Soda Springs out, that's on past agreement, that's not included here. It is included in this presentation because we don't have approval as of yet. But again, we're committed to 5 hubs, 27 bike racks, and then obviously almost tripling the number of bikes in town.
Okay, and I guess my thought is if the $20,000 we allocated for Soda Springs, I think we'd anticipated concrete work and hardware and all that. If that was to be moved down to the location at Canyon Avenue and Lovers Lane, it looks to me like it's essentially a matter of drilling holes in the concrete and putting in the rails. So it seems like that would be substantially less than $20,000. And, I guess I'd be looking for a credit.
Yeah, and equipment doesn't cost $20,000. I mean, when we talk about pouring concrete, from my understanding, the only location that would have required pouring concrete was the Pocket Park on Soda Springs. And I don't know if that was the original request as part of the ask for funding from Manitou for last year's agreement. But the $20,000 spreads across for operations. To my knowledge, we were here about mid-2021. So there was expenditures, there's going to be expenditures ongoing. We're going to meet our requirement for the last agreement, and we're hoping to proceed with additional and expanded services for the next year.
Okay, and I guess another way that I kind of look at the problem here is, or the situation is, so we contributed $35,000 last year. For that, there were 1,603 trips. If you break that down to a per trip cost, that's $21.83. That's fairly expensive. I mean, you could hire a cab, certainly. If we do the projection of going to 10,320, I question how realistic that is. Maybe it would happen. We have no data. That brings the subsidy down to 339, but that's a huge difference. That's almost 6.5 times the difference. So, if I was looking at this from a purely business standpoint, I would say this is not, this isn't sustainable. So something's going to have to change. Either You know, and the hope, I guess, is that we get more people to ride and bring the cost down. Is that actually going to happen? You know, I kind of have some doubts that it's going to be that we're going to see basically a 6.5-fold increase in ridership by adding more hubs. I think we'll get some will go up. So I guess I'm the Grinch here tonight. I'm less enthusiastic about this than I think my colleagues on council. It looks like everybody else is on the bandwagon and wants to do it and have bicycles. Yeah, I don't favor this as it is now. I could maybe entertain a more phased approach and add 2 hubs or something like that. And maybe less commitment to the administration. I don't see that Manitou's getting a whole lot for this. About 1,600 people get to ride a bike when they want to, but you know, that's about one Manitou resident when you look at our population. Council, questions, comments? Nancy?
Mayor Graham, may I talk to you about that?
Yeah, just a second. Julie, Nancy had her hand up there before you.
Okay.
Nancy, then we'll come back
Yeah,
to you,
I've done
Julie.
the same calculation and I'm very comfortable with it. I think it takes years to build up this sort of a program. Before you had roads all over the country, cars, I'm sure, were much more expensive as well. I think it's well worth the investment and we need to give it years, not just 2.5 years to develop. And until we get those west side, and I mean, I would love to see one at Schmishny. I would love to see one out at the Trading Post. I don't know if you've got one out there. So I just think that this is an investment for the future and I'm totally on board with it, recognizing that it does look expensive. As I said earlier, the cost per ride is, it's well worth the cost per ride. Additionally, if we get grants for it, that'll help. And there are, I think, grants out there for this sort of thing that can help us. Additionally, Pike Ride does so many things that aren't easily calculated. So all the events that they support, I didn't know about the school agreement that you're entering into. I find that very exciting. So this to me is a systemic approach to getting people to ride bikes in Manitou. And so I remain very committed to it.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say, Mayor, that while I really can understand and appreciate your concern, I think it's a valid concern. I wanted to suggest that we give it a year or 2 more and then reevaluate whether that's something we want to continue, because it being that it's in its earliest stages, it's hard to evaluate, much of like Nancy just explained. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of the price is there's also the factor of reducing congestion and traffic downtown, reducing some of the pollution. Those are things we haven't put a price tag on, but do make a difference overall. So I just wanted to encourage you to have some patience. In terms of our entire budget, $35,000 is probably 1/3 of our Christmas lights. It's nothing. And so I just wanted to give it a chance and not cut it off at the knees or kind of make it so much smaller than it should be in order to be successful, and then reevaluate in a couple of years.
Okay, thank you, Julie. No, and I think you made some good points. Certainly there's some intangibles that are involved in all that. Yeah, I guess in thinking through things a little bit, if you were taking this from a more maybe a little more business standpoint, you know, your question would be, okay, now I need to market this so I get more people using it and bring down the unit cost. So, and I guess one of my fears is that we have these annual meetings, we approve things thinking they're going to be great, and then we all kind of walk away from them expecting a miracle to occur. And the idea of actually remarketing, what are we doing to encourage people throughout the year to use those bikes? Maybe that needs to be pushed a little harder. Again, I think if you're approaching from a business situation, if you were going to go ahead and make that commitment, you'd go a little farther and try to actually accelerate the acceptance of these, get them used.
I think that's a fabulous idea, John. And I think that's something that Leslie Lewis and the Chamber should pick up on. That's a great idea.
Okay.
That
thank
can be
thank you.
that can be part of our tourism appeal that I don't know has ever been mentioned by any of the ads I've seen from the chamber. So I think that's a great idea. We need to market it.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle has her hand raised. Michelle?
Can I ask you, how much the average cost is for, say, 2 hours?
Yes. Let me grab my phone. Hang on.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm asking that question is, we are a tourist town. And say the average family that comes to see us is 5, 2 adults, 3 children. So, if they rent a bike, an e-bike at say $40 per e-bike, that's $200 to $31. That per person? 1 2-hour trip? So 155 compared to $200. And then this family is able to go to the Garden of the Gods. They're able to go down to Old Colorado City, all the things, and park further out even, and not come in all the way to Manitou Springs, causing congestion on Manitou Avenue and circling. So I am so in favor of this. And yes, I can't think of an example right now, but we have to pay money now to ensure the future. And that's why I'm for the investment of $35,000 a year.
Okay. And I guess my thought is if you're going to pay money to ensure the future, you should do some things to ensure that that future comes to fruition. Okay. Which means is don't just hand the money over and expect people to use the bikes, market them. You know, if you're going to have the bikes there, make sure they get used. And my fear now is that we let them sit there. I mean, they're getting 4.4 trips per day on the average. I mean, when you take 3 years worth of statistics and you add it up, yeah, you get a number like 5,000 something, 5,500, you know, and it's more impressive. But the reality is, are we just going to be bleeding money? If we're going to do this, we need to do this right. I mean, how many restaurants have opened up and then they didn't have something together? They didn't have good food, or they didn't have an adequate wait staff. You know, they made an investment, but they didn't go far enough to make this successful. So yes, then you're wasting your money. And if we're going to try and do something that's successful, I want to see a good probability of success. That's my concern. Let's see. Judith had her hand up and then you, John. Okay, so Judith and then John.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to tell you how much I really appreciate your fiscal prudence. I don't always think that we do a work session appropriately. This reminded me of what a work session looks like. And I really appreciate everybody's heads, getting together and coming up with these great ideas. And so I appreciate that. That said, I have to say that I support everything that Nancy Fortune said about this investment and also other council members. A point of clarification though, so I would just want to make sure that you said you were committed to the 5 hubs, 27 bikes. So the station that was funded for Soda Springs Park as of last year is now the Canyon. That's now going to be on Canyon, or am I hearing you say that if this Pike Ride station by Tubby's looks like it's a go, that would also be installed this year? Is that what I'm hearing you say? I just want to make sure I've got you right.
Thank you, John.
I think this council knows how I feel. I think the overhead for cycling, transit should all be captured in our parking program. And then I think once you arrive here, I think you ought to be able to get on the 33, the 36. I believe you ought to be able to get on the 3 friction-free, okay? I also believe that you ought to be able to just take a bike and use it friction-free without a price tag if there was some way that we would do this, okay? I would like to see an increase in the usage. And so if the barriers are, okay, and I watched somebody who used to be on this council fiddle faddle around, okay, who's pretty technically adept, okay, with his iPhone, okay, fiddling around, loading that Pike Ride app, trying to get it working, trying to get his credit card connected and the whole 9 yards, okay? As it turned out, after an hour, I had to go down and help him, okay? All right, get this all. So that's all overhead and friction that I would like to see go away, okay? Because I would like to see a lot more butts on bikes in this town, okay? As friction-free as possible. So this $35,000 doesn't bother me. But if it's only getting us tepid results, I'm with Mr. Graham here, okay? I'm pretty grumpy about that. I really want to see us remove barriers and make this easier to happen, okay? Because for us, we can increase our parking fee by just cents to cover this amount. And if we're getting people out in the fresh air, okay, and not driving their cars around and this type of thing, and we grow with a reputation as a community that has these kind of things, I'm all for it. But where I am with John is if the usage is low, okay, yeah, that makes me grumpy. Thank you.
Can I have a question? Like in Colorado Springs, I don't know how close you watch the different hubs, but I would guess that you probably collect some kind of metrics and you know when some place is overperforming or underperforming, or, I mean, you know, you see, okay, like every bike was rented, so you're going to put a couple more bikes out there because the demand is high. It's a busy place. And by the same token, you've got hubs that are, you know, you have several bikes there and a couple never seem to get rented. So you move things around so that you can, you know, load your inventory to match your system and optimize it and make it more efficient. So, I mean, if you have underperforming areas in Colorado Springs, what do you do? The light comes on, but it doesn't sound like it's working.
Yeah, I can't hear when the speakers are speaking. I can only hear council speaking.
Is that better?
We're trying to fix that, Julie.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry about
thank you.
Yes, so I agree with your assessments. If the system is not performing, yes, it shouldn't be financially contributed to, right? Like, I think that's just general, everything in life, right? I do think that there are some things that we could do to increase use. We have a hub at Hiawatha that is a little bit buried. You can't see it very well. One of our suggestions has been to get the Mountain Metro shelter moved and move our hub across the street, opening up more parking spaces at Hiawatha and making the bike share more visible. We also talk about Shriver. I think Shriver is really cool that it's next to the EV charging stations, but it's a little bit hidden. So we've also talked about moving that hub over to the Mountain Metro bus stop. There's concrete already there. It would be a simple shift. That's why we're also talking about proposed signage, because there are things that we can do to increase use, and they're small things, but I do think that they will help 100%. And when we also talk about increasing use, again, adding more hubs, making it accessible and easy for people to use is one of those things that does change the actual use. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we just have to get there, right? Like, we have to move some hubs. If something's underperforming, let's look at it and see where it might perform better. Moving the bike racks, it's anchors in concrete. We can easily do that. And our system is flexible where we can put a hub extend our service area. So these are all things that we would love to talk about. And if we see something that's underperforming, we can make changes so that it does perform better.
Thank you. Roy?
Yeah, Ms. Wolf brought up that we, try a year. And I think what you can do, Mayor, is hold us accountable, come back in a year and show us the improvement. I mean, it's going to be easy to show from this year ridership to next year's ridership and see if the numbers go down. And then if it doesn't, then this is something we can cancel. So I think we do have a chance here to show you the difference from the year to year, especially with additional hubs, which helps with that connectivity, which is important for bikes. So that would be a way to test a year and see if it works. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. John, did you have something? Did I? Thanks, Ray.
Just real quick.
Mhm.
So what would it take for you guys to change your system to just go over and just use a bike because it's geolocated here in Manitou? Is it because you want to have the identity and the credit card number of somebody in case somebody throws the bike in the back of their truck and absconds with it? And can you recover anything with that?
So yes, the bike is tracked. There is GPS module in the lock that allows us to protect our equipment. The bikes these days are almost $3,000 each. And so when you talk about 300 bikes out and about on the street, it is an expensive piece of equipment. It also allows us to talk about how many trips were taken and how many miles traveled per bike within the system. And maybe I'm misunderstanding. Go ahead, ask
Well,
again.
I guess what I'm asking, you can already do that. So I'm just asking, what if the bikes were unlocked here in Manitou? So
Mhm.
essentially you just walk up and you use the bike. Now, if you take it down to Colorado Springs
Uh-huh.
and you relock it or whatever,
Mhm.
then, hey, I guess I don't have a problem with you having to pay your system down there. I'm just asking, is that possible to do that kind of a thing where these bikes could be friction-free because they're geolocated here? That anybody can essentially kind of walk up, okay, use the bike,
Sure.
all right?
Sure. So yes, I'll say that lots of things are possible. I recently reached out to state representatives to see if bike share could be part of the zero fare for clean air. It is public transportation and probably deserves that program as well as our other transit operations across the state. So there's lots of things that we can do. I can't say it's the KISS, keep it simple and stupid, but there's probably possibilities, yes, that we could do that. So if there's funding available where we could make bike share free for July, August, and September, let's do it. More people riding.
Thank you. I think the council is generally supportive of this. I'm the only real Grinch. I don't need to belabor the meeting here any longer, but I would like to get some feedback on a regular basis so that we can, if we need to tweak the system, I mean, it's just going to be a dynamic system. So I think it needs dynamic response in terms of how we manage it. Yeah, I'd like to see more hands-on. I'd like to see more, a more proactive approach to get people to actually use this stuff. I think back last summer, my wife and I were in Southern California and I got around with just a phone, which for a dinosaur like me, that was pretty remarkable. But we could get on a transit system in Long Beach, get on the light rail and get to Pasadena. And there was a seamless connection so that I could connect with each transit system and it knew where I was. It told me when the next bus was to where I wanted to go. And I mean, it was a very easy to use system. And I think back now where we're missing the boat, one of the things in transit, and it's not just bikes, it's buses too. What do you do? What if you show up here from Denver and you want to come to Manitou? You're dropped off in an airplane or a car or bus, however, but you don't know how to, you're just relying on public transit. Can you use your phone to get from, say, downtown Colorado Springs to Manitou and back or wherever? And I'd like to think that there's a software solution and all that in the future. Now that's putting a lot on you and I don't expect you to solve it, but that's the kind of a problem that I think that we as a culture should be trying to solve.
Mhm.
How do I make it simple?
Mhm.
Okay. So with that, if council, Denise, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mayor, I just want to, and Juan, could you add, I believe we do monthly reports on Pike Ride in our weekly report, and we can add how much increase we've seen over the last year from that same month. So Juan, you do that part of the weekly report, correct? But it's only once a month?
Correct. And we're also adding it to our, when we meet collectively with our map board, that's one of the reports that we add in there as well, that we started just this past month adding it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, may I say something before we move on?
Sure, Julie, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate that I think the chamber can be our friend and can really help us with this by having it be part of their advertising to appeal to the public. I don't know who's going to talk to Leslie about it, but I think somebody, I would like, since I would like somebody to be responsible for ensuring that this is something that's incorporated in our advertising.
Thank you, Julie. Roy is raising his hand. Okay, okay, there's been email, Denise sent an email to Leslie right now, and Roy will take care of that. So that answers your
Thank you.
question. Okay.
Thank you.
I think then the general direction from council is to go ahead with this. I would ask that you do some things to, let's make it work. If we're going to put the money in it, let's make it work. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Appreciate the feedback.
Oh, yeah. If there's no objection, why don't we take a 10-minute break? Everybody okay with that? If we could get started. So, okay, thank you all. So we have our last agenda item then is an update on the downtown employee parking program. Roy, one.
Okay,
You
this
got
is
the
Roy
floor.
Cheney, Deputy City Administrator, and Juan Alvarez, the Mobility and Parking Director. Tonight, we're going to talk about downtown employee parking, which has been a challenge here in Manitou Springs, and part of our whole program here from what we're doing with parking is that we look at all these different components. So tonight, we're really focusing on this, and Juan will start it off. Go ahead, Juan.
So we really worked hard to attain as much data as we could from all of the businesses and employees. And a few things that we did is that we put out a survey. We also put out flyers. We also work closely with the Chamber of Commerce to reach out to a lot of these businesses and employees to see if we can gather as much data as we could. So according to the Chamber of Commerce, we have 106 businesses that are located here in Manitou Springs. We have about 129 permits that were purchased in 2023. And some the INL cost for the on-street portion of where they park is $100, which comes out to about $8 a month. If you want to break it by day, it's about 31 cents per day. We also have permits in the lots below for our annual lot permits. The two from the 4 lots, that's Minsky and Wichita, those are Metro District lots, and they determine pretty much the pricing. They can go higher or lower, but they're the ones that determine the rates for those 2 lots. Next slide. So on this map, as you can see, everything in red from the 400 and 500 block is all on Manitou Avenue. The red box that you see there is Hiawatha, where they also park during the week. On the east side of the Hiawatha lot, we also have the mansions where they park on the weekends. We have the Cannon lot, and then we have the Upper Cannon area. And right below that, we have the Prospect lot. And the 2 yellow areas that you see is one of them is a elementary school, and the other one is a church, where we're currently pursuing parking, allowing us to use parking for employees only. Next slide. So the approach that we're looking here, in addition to lots, is that we're looking at the micro transit program. We're also looking at mountain metro bus passes. We're looking at what we heard recently with Pike Ride employee discounts. And we're trying to embrace this and have the employees adopt this to just expand the approach to having have different options, for a discounted rate if possible, as we look at this approach.
Okay, now we talk about the survey. So in December 2023, we had a survey done with the help of our PIO. It was included online, flyer, and a QR code, or with a QR code. And Chamber of Commerce was also included to help us with this survey. We had 50 responses, 22 business owners, and 28 downtown employees. That was a little bit lower than we would like. So we did, Juan set up a community meeting on January 18th, and we had 25 people attend that meeting. And my understanding, Juan, that was mostly employees.
Most of them were employees. There were, for the exception of two were business owners.
From some of the results of the survey, we found out 28.6% live in Manitou Springs, 50% live in Colorado Springs, 50% have a one-way commute of over 6 miles, and then 82% work 5 days a week. James. Next slide. Some of the main points that we in information where people wrote down what they wanted in parking. So we did allow that. that they put down besides just the general survey, they put down specifics. And these are not necessarily the whole group. It's just a couple of the high points where people were close to asking for the same thing. A couple of the key points in for business owners was make it affordable, low cost, or free, the parking. Late shifts need consideration. Safety, lighting, access to shuttle, which is one of our challenges here, which hopefully our trams and those things maybe can help out. But we do have a challenge here from, if they start work at 9 a.m. and then they stay until 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., it's hard to have them park further away. So that's our challenge when it comes to employees and their shifts. And we tried that at 7-Eleven and it didn't work too well because we probably didn't have enough tram use and shuttles coming by. Designated parking near work. That's something we're currently working on with the RPPs. And we do a lot of studies in other cities and their use of RPPs is showing that it's working. And one reason that the RPPs work in neighborhoods is that right now visitors may be parked in neighborhoods and you don't know who they are, but an RPP in designated spots would allow for employees that get to know the neighborhood. And so you know who they are, you can trust them versus just visitors trying to take open slots. So it has been a way for some cities to improve their RPP and help the business community that are nearby their shops. And the one we're piloting right now on Upper Canyon will be see how that goes. That'll be interesting, but we're positive it'll have a decent effect and work for those neighborhoods. Guaranteed parking availability anywhere in the city is something else that was brought up. And then create more parking, and that could be satellite or parking garages and so they said we just need to have more parking. Employees' feedback. Next slide. Okay, thank you. Incentives to promote walking, biking, shuttles, and other forms of microtransit was the question. And some of the standalone answers that they wrote down were free employee parking permits. Currently, as Juan said, it's $100 per year. Free bus passes, which we are talking about with Mountain Metro, possibly a pass program, and how that's going to be worked out with payment. We don't know yet. Transit hours to cover beginning and ending shifts. And that's going to be critical if we're trying to hit employees. They have to feel safe coming in and they have to feel safe going home in the dark. So how do they get back to their vehicles if not nearby their business? And then free access to bicycles and scooters. Again, just another form of transportation that would be utilized. And then better bike lanes and extend bike trails. And for those who remember the TMMP, the Transportation Mobility Master Plan, one of the key things with bikes is that you have that connectivity that's safe to travel. And so we always have to consider how we make it safe and in a sense protected from the cars and such. And then of course, trails are starting to be expanded with the Creek Walk and as we continue to move with that. So Juan, go ahead.
So one of the things that we did outside of Manitou Springs that we did some research in other cities that were pretty comparable to Manitou Springs. One of the cities was Durango, and they currently have a monthly pass for the surface lot, and it's $30 a month. They do have on-street parking, and that's $75 a month. And they do focus on passing out brochures and flyers to help employees consider biking, walking, and transit. Transit passes do offer a $1 ride or a $30 a month for unlimited use. Breckenridge does $100 a year, similar to what we do here. However, they do have a lottery permit, which is from $100 to $500 a year, and that's like prime. They could pretty much park at any location that they want. But part of the lottery system is that there is a waiting list for that, so not everybody is guaranteed, and they have to wait. They do offer, one of the incentives that they do is that they do offer free satellite parking to incentivize people to park outside of their premium areas. And they do have transit available. Colorado Springs, they have on-street at $90 a month for employees. And then they do have a $50 a month in Old Colorado City, and it's a service lot. So we wanna accomplish, we have 3 phases and we wanna start by phase 1. So for spring and summer 2024, we don't want to make any changes to what we currently have right now. Kind tanks will remain transferable. We do want to maintain the downtown employee parking where they're currently parking right now. And we will maintain the free parking 7 days a week after 6 p.m. We would, however, we will add the tram pilot for spring break. And with that, one of the things that when we met with our map board is that we were looking at a route from the pool lot to down to Ruxton and back. And we figured instead of waiting for the summer to start like in the spring, start like now in the springtime on March 1st. That way between now and summer, we need to make any kind of adjustments, we can make them with no issues.
So real quick, Juan, so just a little correction there. We're looking at the spring break period. So not necessarily we're going to be ready for transit or the trams start March 1st for the whole time. Just want to be clear. It's going to be for the 2 weeks of spring break that we do a pilot and test how that works out from the pool to the Ruxton roundabout and see how long they last with people on it and what other things issues we come across. So that's the plan for the 2 weeks of spring break that get really busy here, like the summer. And then you were going to do the VIA still. Okay, go ahead and talk about the VIA.
Yeah, so we're also looking at microtransit with VIA. We've also been working with our map board, just asking questions. And this is going to favor the residents primarily, but it's also going to be able to assist employees, especially if those who work long hours. And it's going to be a combination of where they park so that we can make those assessments.
So just one more thing with the VIA, just so you understand how we're going to go through this at this point, is we're going to meet with MAPS and talk about VIA this month, try to figure out how we best use it. And then once we decide and they help us decide a good path forward with this, we're going to bring this to council in March to also have it introduced to you all. And then you can ask your questions and then we can go from there. Yeah, thanks, Juan.
One of the other options we want to explore is a digitization of permits linked to license plates. This is going to be an option where people can go directly online. They don't have to go to the office. They could do it rapidly right away. This will also allow businesses to give vouchers to their employees if they want to give them a discounted rate. For instance, if they have orientation, if they have 1 to 3 days, they can give them that discount and they could all do it just by entering the license plate with that specific voucher. It keeps a tight audit system also where people are not being able to transfer permits if we don't have any knowledge of it, and it would keep a tight operation with the digital permits. We're also we want to keep exploring options with the on-street locations in RPP area, similar to how we have it in the Upper Cannon area, to incentivize employees so they could possibly find closer parking to their location. And then we're looking at tram schedule and routes, the frequency, and just meeting the needs of the business, the employees for the businesses. One of the things that they're really concerned about is that hours that they get out of their business and being able to be picked up and dropped off whenever they get out of work. Phase 2. So for phase 2 and fall of winter 2024, we're looking at the Dillon property. It's still to be determined when the hotel is going to be up and running with our parking. We're looking at extending our hours for our bus and our trams. We're looking at possibly having it as designated area for possibly employees, and also looking at another option, whether we want to use it for the incline and cot parking if possible. If the way that we want to tie this in with our parking areas, if we were to move the COG and the incline over to the Dillon, that would potentially open up, and this would only be during the off season. It would potentially open up more parking for the employees. Right now, they're currently taking the east side of the Hiawatha lot, but we could potentially open it Monday through Thursday, and open up the entire lot for them during the off season. But Friday through Sunday, that would remain the same. And, except for they would still have to go back and use the east side of the lot. As far as exploring, we will continue as we gather data, we will be able to determine, making better sound decisions of this, from the data that we're collecting from ridership. And just continue to explore additional on-street parking locations in the RPP areas. Next slide. So for phase 3, our final phase, one of the things that we want to do is go 100% digital with our permits. We will maintain the discounted rates by zone. It'll be very easy to buy and renew online or in person. And everything would be associated like with the license plate. So it would be very easy to make any kind of adjustments you could do it online. And if people choose, especially those who are not tech savvy, they're welcome to still come into our office, and we will be more than happy to assist them. We could do it ourselves if that's something that they want, but they have both options. For the Dillon property, we would just continue to gather data, and they just since we will have one full year, we would be able to evaluate the 2024 programs that we currently have in place. And finally, one of the things that we want to really emphasize and enhance is to expand our transit operations communication for traffic. So we want to use different platforms, through social media. So that way, if there's any construction, there's special events, people who are coming into the city will be able to plan ahead of time. If they want to come during an event, or if there's parking available, or if, due to weather conditions or construction, if there's constructions, they'll be able to see areas that are being affected so they don't run into those areas.
Okay, now if you have any questions about the program, any specific areas?
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Shada?
How can we get some solar lighting in the Wichita lot? That lot is really dark at night. I think that's really problematic for both our visitors and employees navigating a really dark parking lot at night. I'm not so much concerned about the Hiawatha lot because I don't know if there's a lot of nighttime parking use over there. But it seems like to me that some innovative, solar, parking lot lights in Wichita would be, I think, a great safety enhancement to give. I think that's kind of not a great lot to have, an employee walk into who has an employee parking, much less any of our guests that are using that at night.
So that would be just us talking with Mountain Metro District, which I do believe we meet with them tomorrow in the monthly meeting. And but we can ask them if they want to put it in their lots. But I think some additional lighting, as long as it's the dark skies type, but shines on the asphalt and not in the sky, would be something we have to look at. And I'm all in favor of solar type lights as well. I think they are much more effective today than they used to be, and probably could do something like that.
I think the other lot that definitely needs some assistance is, as all our street lights are constantly always dying with essentially this lousy service we get from CSU, where, you've got to call in, you have no idea when it's going to get repaired. Okay, there's no callback, there's no tracking of it. You can look all over town. Okay. And to me, I think the Canyon lot is another one which we do own, which it seems like to me we ought to move forward and get some decent lighting in that lot as well. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll look at also increasing the wattage, the bulbs. We did that at the pool. It seems to help. And so it might be a wattage issue. So I'll check on that first because that'll be a cheaper way to go forward. And if it works and increases the lighting, and then we can go from there on additional lights themselves. And I think mansion's also been brought up too, of being fairly dark.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Natalie and then Judith?
I think you're doing this, but I just kind of want to keep in mind when we're comparing ourselves to other cities with just that reminder that as a service industry tourist town, the average income of our employees is like 30,000 a year. And if we're comparing it to like an office type job where people are making 75, 80,000, that's a different thing. So like when I see that, those numbers, like the $80 a month, like my adrenaline just goes through the roof because I'm like, how the heck could we do that? And so I just want you to be aware that like, this could be like, I don't say triggering, but like, this was like a stressful presentation. If we're looking at some of these other cities and what they're doing, just kind of keep that in mind. So, but I think you're doing that. I just wanted you to be aware that if I were an employee sitting in an audience and I saw those numbers, I would be like, oh my gosh. I
Well,
don't even know.
Ours is $100 a year.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying is we are doing.
Yeah, you mean the other
well,
ones from the other
But when you
cities?
compared to other cities, I was like, oh, please, please, please tell me that we're not really comparing ourselves to that because it
You
feels
know,
very different.
Juan went and looked out just to see from other cities what they're doing and
Yeah.
nearby in Colorado. And that's what we're coming up with. I mean, they charge a lot more than
Yeah,
we
it was
do
just a
already.
scary PowerPoint.
Oh, I get it.
That's all.
Okay.
Just
Right.
kidding.
Yeah, and that was the
you.
idea, looking at a lot of municipalities that they are charging more. And I think it's a good time to actually educate like the people that we work with, our business owners, so that they know, they are getting a very good rate.
And I think it's one that's appropriate to the income level of
Right.
our employees. And so we just have to make sure that balance is there.
Yeah, there is something else too, and this is from the Donald Shoup book, but talks about that if they would buy these permits for their employees, that it's also a tax write-off for them as well. So it's something that businesses can do to recoup a lot of that cost if they support their employees. Again, it's only $100 a year, which is great, and we don't
Mhm.
anticipate going higher.
Yeah.
We're trying to
that's, I
support
think,
them, yeah.
the important part. So thank you.
Thank you, Judith and then Nancy.
Thank you, Mayor. So many moving parts to this. I just appreciate that we're beginning to have this conversation. And while I wish that there had been more responses to the survey, any data is good data and it's a place to start. I have a very half-baked idea that I'd like to discuss with you that I was trying to flesh out today. And as I reviewed particularly slide number 5, employee results, and slide number 7, employee results, about 30% live in Manitou, 50% live in Colorado Springs, 50% have a one-way commute of over 6 miles. I wasn't sure if that meant that 50% have a commute less than 6 miles. But I was thinking about this, especially in lieu of what Counselor Johnson just mentioned about the average income of our people that come in here to work. The idea of opening up the e-bike voucher program. Currently you have to be a resident for 1 year. But just percolating on the idea that if you were a full or part-time employee for a minimum of 1 year and you otherwise income qualified, I'm thinking that we could possibly open up the e-bike voucher program too. I did mention it to Juan. Just food for thought, because I think that it's really important to honor our residents who live here, but also acknowledge our employees, especially if we've got a lot of employees that have a commute that's 6 miles or less and they're living in Colorado Springs. If they can get a bike and at least be traveling here in the high season when the weather's good, just an idea to throw out. Because we do have some vouchers left over that have not been claimed yet. So just an idea to percolate on it. We want to get more butts on bikes, and I think this would be a good way to do that.
Great, thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, several things. One is we've concentrated a lot on residents, which is great and very, very important over the past couple of years. And I'm think that, we depend completely on our businesses for our economic base in the city. So I'm glad to see, and I've of course asked for this, but I'm glad to see such good thought put into an employee parking program, because I do think that that's one of, without good employees, we're not going to have strong businesses. And from an economic standpoint, that's not good. And, employee turnover is problematic. Anyway, I'm preaching the choir, but so I'm very glad that you're doing this. And of course, your presentation ticks a number of my boxes. One is it's a plan, which I really appreciate. It's a phased plan, and it's a very good foundation and a good framework of a plan. So thank you for taking the time and effort to do that and to try to get some employee and employer data to include in it. And so secondly, the data, that's another tick box for me. And I agree with Counselor Chandler that more is better, but you got some good data here. And I also really appreciate the fact that you're trying to encourage employees to use microtransit, public transportation, and incentivizing that as opposed to just looking for more parking spaces, because I don't think that that's a good future for us. And thirdly, or whatever, fourthly, whatever, I would like to just as an aside, agree with Counselor Chandler to say that I really appreciate the setup for a work session. It goes back to what we used to do, and I think it's a much more conducive to having a work session. And I appreciate that this has been a very good discussion overall tonight. And I think that both the agenda was set up with that in mind, and the physical layout of it was that in mind. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Oh,
Okay,
may I
this-
ask some questions at
Yeah,
some
Julie,
point?
please. You've got the floor, Julie.
Oh, thank you. My screen is so tiny that I can't tell if anyone else has raised their hand. I'm just curious, when the different cities were being compared, and you were talking about the price for monthly passes or annual passes to park in their lots, did they have the same experience we do, where even after you pay, you may still not get a parking spot because none of them are reserved?
The only place was Breckenridge, and they're the only ones that had a waiting list because of the prime permits that they have. The one for $100 to $500.
Oh, okay, I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. So the lottery permits where you get your reserved spot and you don't have to worry about getting there, and your spot will be filled by someone else.
And it's not a reserved spot. You can pretty much park anywhere. There is no restrictions in any area that you park. It's wherever you want to park, but you're gonna have to pay the prime rate of $500. Depending on where you are on the waiting list.
Well, my point is, my question then is, did any of these cities guarantee to their purchasers that the parking lot would have a space for them?
They didn't have any restrictions from the information I gathered.
And no restrictions that,
So the answer is no, they don't guarantee the spots. You get your permit and then you're allowed to park in available
okay,
areas.
and if it's full, and that's just the way it goes?
Yes. Now, I
Oh,
will say that in some of the lots, like downtown Colorado Springs, if they do park in the parking garage, there's normally a lot of room in there still in some locations. So they could be almost guaranteed, because there's some areas that are slower than others, but then of course other areas are busier and there is no guarantee.
okay.
in the park.
I also wondered if there's a way that we could have employees use the e-bikes to go from, say, Hiawatha to the downtown area, so they can go to and from their where they park their vehicle if they drive into town, and then to get to work, and then to get back safely on an e-bike. If there was some kind of a program we could extend to help, financially or what have you, to promote that kind of thing. And then I very much want to support the additional lighting, even if we have to pay for it, rather than the Metro District paying for it over in Wichita. I think lighting is so important. It helps prevent rape. It helps prevent vehicles being broken into. It's just a great thing, and it's not that expensive. Thank you.
Yeah, and Julie, I did want to mention that Pike Reich is going to be researching that information, and they are going to be including a voucher program for those who do use Pike Reich
Employees.
for employees.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Nancy?
Yeah, the discussion tonight just drives the question of what is the rate of crime in our parking lots?
I don't have that answer. The police may have that answer. I will say this, that like, for example, Higginbotham Flats is probably a no-go for a bike ride because they are getting bikes stolen in Colorado Springs. And we haven't had any here, by the way. She told me that we had no thefts of bike ride bikes. since
Yeah,
they've
and I'm
come in.
just talking crime in general, break-ins to vehicles.
It changes by
attacks.
season. I know the holiday
There's
season
any-
is
I'd
definitely
be curious
more,
To
you
know
know,
what we're dealing with.
but I don't know that, Denise.
Yeah, I can get you those numbers. That's pretty minimal at this point, but I can get you those numbers. I also spoke with somebody today that there's a grant program coming out for lighting at some parking lots. And so they're going to tell me when it is and we'll apply. It's supposed to be a fairly simple grant to apply for that pays 100% of the lighting. So she'll let me know as soon as that is available and we'll apply for some lighting opportunities. Also some cameras are available as long as the camera is not facial recognition. So it wouldn't be something to be able to use in case of a crime, but it does just allow us to have some additional surveillance available. So we can definitely look at it, but I can let you know what the crime rate is. It's pretty small in parking lots, but I can let you know.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? I guess I'd like to commend you guys. I think the job you're doing, I like this, what you presented. I like the idea that it's phased and you've got a timeline so we can do things kind of step by step and work through the problems as we go. I think that's realistic. I guess, and looking through the materials, I guess one thing that caught my eye there was that 7% of the employees said they would use a satellite lot, which means 93% wouldn't. At some point, you try to solve people's parking problems, but it seems to me like we may reach a threshold. So I don't know how far, we'll try things, but maybe we're going to hit a limit. Something I was thinking about, and you might know, what would the average income, say, be on one parking slot, say in Hiawatha for the year? And just a guess. I mean, well, the educated guess.
The cost for,
I'm sorry, the revenue. And Roy, I'm thinking back several years ago, I think you gave us a number of like 2,400. And that was, we had no experience at that time. We were just beginning to charge for parking at Hiawatha. But, well, let's suppose it is $2,400. Okay, so we've got some slots out there at the east end. We basically sell for $100. Okay. We could be selling for 2,400. Okay, but then we don't have that defeats our purpose of trying to make parking. So we would actually do better financially if we let people park for free farther out and then brought them in possibly. I mean, that's
correct.
something. I mean, you basically then if it was free, maybe more people would use it. I don't know. I mean, that's something for you guys of one of the many things you have to think over. So
Yeah, so
I would certainly entertain that.
So, that's correct. The whole progressive parking program, which is starting to work. We're finally have a full year of data and seeing some progress in the occupancy levels. Which I think next month we were going to present some of that to show you that because everything's connected. But, the premium parking areas downtown are always going to be like, hey, I want to get those. And once you realize, well, the cost is what it is, then maybe I want to go to the next level and then further out. And that's why we went like $3 a day in the zone 3, which is by the Chase Bank and further. And then we, Hiawatha is a little bit cheaper than downtown core. And then of course, as you go further out, Dillon, could even be cheaper and so or whatever, but you try to, as you go away from the core, you do push the fact that it's gonna be cheaper and you can park longer. But the key is always can we get them into town? And I think Tara said it best when she said, everyone wants to be like 2 minutes from walking through the door, and park right at the front, even at a fitness center, right? They don't want to exercise getting to the door. But that's the challenge in our society, right? So, but it is working. When we lowered our prices in zone 3 to $3, when it used to be just an hourly thing, I mean, we went like from 5% occupancy to like 70% in a weekend. And it was like, wow, okay, that does work. And so now we're at $3. It's the off season, so we're not seeing as much, but summer definitely worked. And if we had that tram work in and people get picked up as well, I think it becomes a new prime area because of cost itself. But yeah, I'd have to get the data again. I can't remember from a few years ago on the cost per parking spot, but yeah, that's a real loss, right? If it's not working right. And, but free is important as you leave the core. Otherwise, if it's free downtown, that's where I'm going. I'm gonna look for the parking, even if I have to cruise, and that's what happens. But we'll bring more data on that next month to help everyone understand where we're at today on that side of it, as we also look at other parts of the whole puzzle of parking and mobility.
Right. And I noticed one of your bullet points there talked about dedicated parking for the incline and for the COG. And certainly several years ago, Denise and I had conversations with John Southers relative to the incline and with Gary Pearson relative to the COG. And they seem to be, they like the general idea of having places where users would have a dedicated parking place. So there was support for that. And that could be remote because at the time, the hypothetical parking place that we were discussing was the Little Fawn, which the story changed a little differently.
Dylan will help with that, but
Yeah. Right.
sorry, Denise, go ahead.
No, Denise.
I was just going to say, they have had those conversations with the incline. The incline is very open to it. And they do believe with the restrooms, and we'll have a water station and all of that at the Dillon, that the incline will really appreciate parking at the Dillon as long as we have the bus to go up there, which will take all of that away from Hiawatha and allow the businesses to get parking at the Hiawatha. So that is the plan as soon as we can get everything in place.
So
Okay. Great. Good news.
just to make sure it's on everyone's brain about the Dillon and the incline. So I was looking at the Hiawatha, number of parking spaces, 155. The Dillon, who knows, anywhere from, we don't know 100% yet, but anywhere from maybe 80 or 90, depends on my trees, all the way to 113, maybe more, depending on some space in that area. But if we don't transplant the program from Hiawatha directly over, then we are going to have some challenges because the whole reservation system was set on what we have available and the turnover rate at the incline, 3-hour kind of turnover. So there's an overlap of cars. So it's definitely going to be a challenge if we lose space for the incline mornings at the Dillon. And unsure at this time if we can accommodate our current metering that we have, the reservations. But one good part of that is because we have the metering program or the reservation program at incline, it's possible we have to have the discussion on how many we allow on the incline to accommodate our current parking at Dillon. And then, of course, we have to have the transportation to get people in, because even the incliners don't want to start exercising until they hit the bottom of that stairs. So that's a challenge, the Dillon, for sure, but it depends on how much space we get there. I think the COG is easier at the Dillon because they have also their own parking up there. And so it's going to be more of the overflow type parking in that, and it's afternoon. So remember, incline's really heavy in the mornings. COG tends to get heavier in the early afternoons to the late afternoon. So that's perfect for the spot, but the actual spots will determine what we do with the incline. So there's definitely a lot of talk on how we approach that if we reduce numbers and stuff like that.
Great. Thank you. Council, any additional questions, comments? If
Oh,
not,
may I make a comment?
yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I just wanted to say that with respect to the statistic that you noticed, where 93% of the people would not be interested, employees would not be interested in parking in an outlying lot. I think if part of that question mentioned if you had a free e-bike to get downtown to the outlying lot and then back again, Or, you know, the tram will come every 15 minutes or whatever it is, our shuttle. That might have given a different answer because most people aren't going to want to walk 1.5 miles each way, you know, in any kind of weather to go to and from work to their car. So I think that was part of why the response was so low.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Denise has a following comment.
You know, something we can look at is UCCS and get some data from them, because when I used to work there, even if they had all of that, everybody fought very hard to have the closest spots possible. And they have a tram that now goes around and will pick you up. And it's like every 7 minutes. So I think if we do some research with UCCS to see what they've done and maybe how they've encouraged the outlying parking for employees and how it's been accepted would be a great place to look at.
And Denise, I think they expanded, I saw something on the news, they expanded the parking area out there for UCCS as well into a park area. And I'm assuming then maybe because of their success with the transportation that made it possible. So I totally agree with Mrs. Wolf's assessment on that. I think the numbers are based on what we're currently kind of doing. And if they're going to be further out, if they looked at the 7-Eleven and tried it, it wasn't probably great for them to get into town or back to their cars. So it's going to be really that additional transportation, the trams and the shuttles, and how do we move them after, or the bikes? I should not forget the bikes, the e-bikes and the bike rides, easily to get in town, which kind of supports maybe a little bit of free stuff. I think what John Shada is trying to pinpoint, a little bit of that, just to get the incentive to do it. And, you know, maybe it's at the beginning stages, we offer the summer free, stuff like that. So, I mean, it could be a way to get things rolling.
The other thing I wanted to mention also, I think we did our survey in December, you know, when we have a lot of holidays. I think maybe next time we may maybe target like a busy month, you know, when we do that survey, when parking is very challenging, and we may be prone to get more people to fill out this data. Roy had a great idea the other day of maybe offering 2 or 3 day passes, you know, in order for them to, you know, fill out that survey and get the data. So.
Thank you, Denise.
The other thing, Mayor, that we all have to consider is the employees that work until 2 a.m. We don't have a tram. We won't have a tram. You don't have a tram for that time of night. So how do we ensure that they're safe? How do we ensure that they get the right parking spaces? And that's something that we're always considering, because that's the ones, you know, if you work till 9 p.m. during the summer, it's still light out and you can usually walk, or you can take a bike or whatever that may be. But if you work till 2 a.m. and you're closing one of the facilities, it's really important that we offer a safe place for them to walk or to get to, because we aren't going to have a tram available at that time. And so that's something that we'll continue to look at as we work through this, because safety is important for everybody.
Denise, I believe the police sometimes provide escorts at that time. Is that?
Yeah, if they're available and you give them a call, they'll definitely come and do escorts. And we have done that in the past. But if they're on a call, then it may take a while, right? But if they're available, they always will come and escort accordingly.
Great. Thank you, Roy.
Yeah, just again, the VIA program, I think is going to be very interesting. Juan and I visited Lone Tree last week at their program, and it was pretty amazing. And they love it. And we used it as we were in the meeting. They said, hey, 15 minutes, our VIA's arriving. And they told us where it's going to be on the app. We got on, it took us where we wanted to go, did it again, came back. It was easy. And then Durango has one, actually. Mr. Stang, who's part of the map board, let me know he reached out and found one in Durango. They're having a lot of success. And that was brought up, you know, a few years ago about microtransit, but now they're really starting to make that work. And that'll be part of that presentation. And the one thing to think about is it's not an Uber. There's a big difference, right? So this VIA would have maybe 2 vans available all day long. And the 2 vans will be taking these calls, these texts or whatever. Don't they go on the app? And they will then automatically, the system sends them to multiple places to pick up people in a pattern, so they can drop them off in a pattern. And it's really pretty cool, because you only have 2 vans working versus 50 Uber cars carrying one person. Their data is very available, so it's nothing hidden. They will let us know. So when we take that to MAPS in 2 weeks, we'll be meeting with MAPS, discussing that, and then coming into council and let VIA present what they did to MAPS already and see what council thinks. But that could be our part solution maybe for the employees at night.
And that's coming on March 12th. So it will be a pilot program is that we're recommending. And that will be coming to you on March 12th during our work session. We'll be presenting that and getting your perspective and direction on that one.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's nothing else, it seems like council's very pleased with what you presented. So I guess the direction is to make it so. You got your plan.
All right. Thank you, council.
Okay.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that brings us pretty much to the end of the evening. We've got any council correspondence? We received council correspondence. Anybody hear anything? I guess not. Wait, one thing, I did kind of want to mention to you. So, February the 24th, it's a Saturday. We'll have a day-long retreat. We're going to get some a presentation here from staff on capital improvements. Denise, would you elaborate?
Yeah, we're we're planning an executive session at the beginning for the first hour. And then we'll hopefully, if we have everything in place, we'll also the second hour talk about our water fund and kind of where that is. And then it will be you, Mayor, I believe, setting the agenda for the rest of it. We will be providing a breakfast and a lunch. So we'll be providing that on the 24th.
Okay, thank you. And I kind of wanted to get a sense of things from council. Next week on the 20th, we're going to have a presentation from Hannah on Plan Manitou. And I think a lot of the flavor of that is going to be leaning towards a strategic plan, plan into the future. So it seemed to me with that in mind, that would play pretty well into, the following Saturday, that February 24th. So I thought maybe we talk about goals, vision, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd like to just go around the table and see if that's what council wants, or if you have some other ideas you want to do. I haven't really done a whole lot to elaborate an agenda. I think we work pretty well together and we can sit around a table and discuss ideas. So that would kind of be my expectation. Julie, did you hear that? I guess she may be. Julie there?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of, I'm asking everybody what their preferences for the 24th. I don't know if you heard me.
Oh, I did. I saw that Hannah's position is advertised, so I wasn't sure if Hannah's even still with us. You said Hannah was going to give us a presentation.
Yeah, she is. I think she's with us till March the 1st. Yeah, March the 1st. So
Oh,
this is her kind of handing things off. So it's an opportunity for us to pick her brain for ideas. I'm sure she'll have quite a bit to tell us. But the follow on being that on Saturday, I think that the flavor of that presentation, my sense is it's going to be largely about strategic planning into the future. And it will be, of course, the Plan Manitou. But following on that, I guess you would characterize Saturday as a day for talking about goals and plans and strategic plans and that sort of thing. So, I mean, are you on board with that, or do you want to?
oh, yes, yes. I was thinking this along the same lines, prioritizing.
Okay, so you're good with that? Okay, let's go around the table then. Judith?
Yeah, I just recall one of our really successful sessions when it was at several years ago at the Trading Post, and we had several whiteboards or, and flip charts, and we were able to, go around and coalesce around some really great goals. So I thought that worked really well. My only question is, are we meeting at 8? Does it start at 8, or will we be starting at 8:30? Okay, 8:30. Okay,
I
great.
think 8:30 with a light breakfast, and then the expectation that we'll be fueled and awake by 9.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Michelle, your thoughts?
I like what Judith said.
Okay, great, thanks. Natalie?
Yeah, I think as long as we're willing to adjust, if something surprising comes out of Plan Manitou, I just don't want, but obviously goals and values are never set in stone, so.
Okay, thank you. Gotta be mobile, be agile. John? You're good with that? Nancy?
I'm not sure that I have a different, I think I have a very different or unique, not a unique concept of what strategic planning is. And it doesn't align with what I think your concept is. So whatever your concept is, you know, I'll go along with.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, I'll bring my ears. I'll plan to listen too. So we'll make the most of the day then. And Denise, you'll be here?
Yeah, Becca, myself, during the executive session, we'll have a couple of other people who've helped with that. So I have a couple of them in for the executive session. So Becca, myself, and Roy will be in attendance that day.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thanks. I did last year, I'd gotten with everybody one-on-one to talk before we had the meeting, so I kind of get a sense of what's going on. If anybody is interested, I'd be happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee and we can talk about stuff. It'd just be a one-on-one meeting. I won't, I'm not gonna set a goal of meeting with everybody. I'll meet with, if everybody wants to, that's fine. I'm happy to do it, but I'm not, you don't have to, it's optional. We'll make it optional. Great. I'm sorry, that's all I've got. City Administrator's report.
Mayor, I just want to mention March 5th is the joint meeting. Do you want to mention that with?
Okay, right, yeah. So March 5th, we'll be having a joint meeting with the school board. It'll be here. It'll be a regular Tuesday night meeting. Not sure when we're going to start just yet. I think, Michelle, it's a hardship for you to get here before 6. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And Natalie, the school board typically meets at 5, do they?
Well, our work sessions meet at 5, our regular meetings start at 5:30, but it is a different, we're trying
Okay.
to adjust to the teachers that have to be there, so.
Right.
But they are aware that we typically start at 6, and I
Okay.
feel like that
Okay.
the school board would not be meeting outside of that meeting, and there would be fewer teachers and staff that had to be at that meeting as well. So it is a different kind of meeting. So I think 6 o'clock is fine.
Okay, so for now, let's just plan 6 o'clock. Okay, and I think we're going to have some food service here. Is that?
Yeah, dinner will be served. So I know Lisa sent out an email today asking for any dietary restrictions. If you could get that to us as soon as possible so that we can make sure we have the right food available that evening.
Okay, and the other thing is topics for the meeting. It was, Natalie had proposed that we do this, and I think the 2 points you made to me initially were that you kind of want to just establish a relationship. And then there was some talk about transportation.
Yeah, I do think that historically, when we've had meetings without any sort of a topic, they've floundered a little. So I think it's just having that agenda. So I think, again, transportation, sustainability, and then, of course, our demographics, I think, are all things that both organizations talk about all the time. So.
Right. Yeah, those are good points. And I was thinking about that a little bit today, sustainability, demographics, kind of what's our future going to look like. So, okay. So if you have thoughts, anybody that you want to discuss with the school board, just go ahead and email them to me, and we'll try to make a productive meeting out of it. Anything else? Okay. I guess not.
Oh, I do want to just mention tomorrow, as many of you know, I'm sitting on the opioid regional board. And so we're now looking at grant applications. So for the next 2 weeks, I'll be putting a lot of time just looking at those grant applications and being one of the votes for recommendations of how we fund programs in the region to help with the opioid addiction, which we all know is a big concern in our region and other regions. So I'm participating in that at this time.
Okay, great. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned.